You are live. It always says you are live, but then when you actually watch the video, it turns out it was 10 seconds later, but never mind. So we are live. Stephanie, really good to see you. I actually wanted Lisa and you guys to be like on together, just because I think you guys would have amazing conversations. You're both from Connecticut. You both have got a really deep interest in true crime, but also a love for the truth that I think, I don't know, I just think you guys would get along like a house on fire. But yeah, so maybe next time. She did actually let me know she really enjoyed the live, and yeah, so maybe in the future.
That'd be great. She's really smart, articulate. I can tell that. I did not realize she was from Connecticut. That's really cool. Of all the
Yeah,
places,
yeah,
right?
yeah. When she'd visit in Connecticut, she'd send me photos, and I was like, wow, this is like fairy tale America, you know. There's just something about
Yeah, it's
Connecticut
really
that's
pretty.
so, yeah, it's amazing.
It's quaint.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So how was your son's 10th birthday?
It was good. He wanted to do hibachi, so we did hibachi, and we had his grandparents and aunt meet us there, and we all celebrated together. It was a lot of fun.
What is that?
It's like when you can choose like shrimp or steak or chicken, and they cook in front of
Oh,
you,
okay.
and they kind of put on like a show.
Oh, okay. Oh, I know what that is. Okay. Yeah, where they sort of cook it in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. Was it with a lot of his friends?
Yesterday it was just family, so
Oh,
our
okay.
immediate family, and then his grandparents and aunts. And in 2 weeks, he's having a child birthday party at a trampoline park.
That sounds like fun. Is it a combined birthday party, or is it like him and
Um,
another kid? Is that why the 2 week delay, or?
because they were booked.
Oh,
it,
oh,
it was in
okay.
high
That makes
demand.
sense. Oh, there we go. Okay. So that was what he really, really wanted, and so it makes sense that he sort of had to stand in a
Yeah,
queue, right? Yeah.
right,
Okay.
right. And
Well,
Saturdays are very busy there. So hi Bria,
yeah.
hi SM Kovalinski, get Spirit 17
Bria,
cents.
so good to see you. We've missed you on so many lives because of time, so it's good to catch you. I always miss you so much when we do Vincent van Gogh, and it's like a name in France, and it's like, Bria, where are you? We need you, you know? So, yeah. You know what we should actually do is try and do a Van Gogh letters with Bria. I'll try and
Oh, that would
identify
be so
one
cool.
where, yeah, and then they even there are a lot of letters that I think he wrote in French, amazingly enough. So even though he's writing to his brother, I think it's actually written in French. In the earlier days, it was obviously Dutch, but I think when he lived in France, I think he wrote them in French, weirdly enough. So maybe she can like read excerpts where you read the English, then you read it in French.
Yeah.
Might be kind of interesting.
Even the
Bria
last one,
says, yeah.
I was gonna say, even the last one, he had done a sketch and he had written in, I think, French what it was. And I couldn't read it. And I was like, oh, I wish Bria could tell me what that means.
Yeah, yeah. Bria says I'd be honored, so that looks like quite a good idea. Um, I do want to be a bit more, what's the word? Social on social media, put it that way. So in terms of the Van Gogh letters going forward, we can maybe try another guest, see, just see how it goes. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, it could be quite interesting. In terms of trampoline, just before we get onto the subject, I kind of grew up with a trampoline at home, and it made me quite a strong child because I became a swimmer, but just like jumping on the trampoline, because you know what kids are like, you know. And so jumping on a trampoline like every day, I was just quite a strong kid because we would jump, do
We
somersaults.
have one in our backyard too.
Oh, really? Really? Yeah. I think that's an
Yeah,
amazing,
and
yeah.
my son loves to do flips on it and
Yeah.
all kinds of things.
I think that's an amazing thing because it's a great draw card to get you outside. I remember often in summer, you know, if we had a girlfriend or friends over, then we would sort of gather there. We would like lie on the trampoline there, and it was just kind of a nice thing, you know.
Yeah, we even do his summer reading out there, just lying on the
Okay.
trampoline.
Yeah, and I mean, in the age of the internet, that's such a nice way of just, you know, bouncing out of it, you know.
Yes, and being active.
Has he gotten any injuries from, you know, doing a backflip that didn't quite work out? Okay. Is it the big
No,
rectangular
and
one?
no, it's a big round one, and it's like
Oh,
enclosed
okay. Oh,
on the
yes, I know
side.
those. Okay.
But
Yeah.
we have it tethered down because we've had storms and they can go flying and kill somebody.
Sure.
So we have
Yeah.
to have them tethered down in the ground.
I saw on Instagram this kid who was, so what they do is they sort of double bounce you, and so he's got like two or three other people around him, and then when he lands, and they sort of, you know, stretch the springs even more, and then he goes even higher, and he ends up like going, it's like crazy. It's like, I don't know if it's two or three stories, but like vertically in the air, and he's just like spinning like this, and it's like, whoa, that's like
Oh my
next
goodness.
level trampolining, you know. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, Bria
Bree
Bria
said,
can talk about trampolines as well. She says, huge vintage trampoline that was my dad's when he was a kid. I still jump. She says we used to camp out on our trampoline, and all the neighborhood kids were always coming over. Yeah, I mean, a trampoline is an awesome drawing card. You're always going to be popular. She says I've gotten injuries for sure. Oh, Bria says she actually sent that to me, the one with the
yeah,
guy
I saw
spinning
that.
around. Yeah, it's pretty incredible. Terry says my son with autism can jump for hours on end on this trampoline. Just a great, simple thing to have at home that just gets you, if you're a kid anyway, it gets you like out, and it sucks up all that energy as well, you know, in
Yeah.
such a nice way. And how we as kids got our first introduction was we'd always go on holiday to the Wild Coast, and they'd always have trampolines at these hotels, and then we would just jump on them like the whole time. You know, if it was dinner time or lunchtime or even breakfast, the first thing we would do is run out and go and jump on the trampoline. And I think my parents decided we've got to get something like this because it'll occupy the kids, kind of thing, you know.
Yeah.
You know, we've got to
Great.
get something like this. It'll be a hit back home, kind of thing.
We do we have rules, so we have no more than 3 people on at a time, and there always has to be an adult watching.
Okay.
That's my rules, I guess.
Is there a age of maturity, like where they can do it independently?
No, but like my nephew has been on it and he's only 2, and if he's on it,
Okay.
it's just him and my
Yeah,
son,
yeah, yeah.
one of my sons, and they're
Well,
super gentle, and it's just him kind of running around on it.
yeah. Well, you're obviously a good mom. I mean, that's good supervision. With my parents, it was like, go and jump, go and jump on the trampoline, you know. But I think we were a bit older. I think the
Well,
first time we got it, we were 12, 14, teenagers, basically.
Yeah. We have it's right outside our sliding glass door, so even if I'm like watching a live, I could have the sliding glass
Oh,
door
okay.
open and see them. So I'm not, I guess I cheat a little bit.
So that's your secret. When you're watching a live, you're actually babysitting, or when you're babysitting, you're watching a live. So that's
multitasking. No, don't tell my neighbors.
Yeah, that is the way to do it. Okay. So Bria also says, I used to work on trampolines with autistic children when I worked with them. Tobe Other, I've never seen you here before, says, oh my gosh, I'm thrilled to make a live. Okay, well, I think, Tobe, you've joined us just in time. We're going to be talking about the Delphi case, or more specifically, what was sort of brought up, what were the questions, comments, what was the whole vibe at CrimeCon in Las Vegas. Stephanie was there. Stephanie took notes on so many cases, and this is the third case we're going to deal with. We'll see if we'll do more of them, but this is quite interesting because you're getting the insights from like family members and from like some of the people closest to the victims. Liberty German, Abigail Williams, you probably know that all of this happened around February 13, 2017. So we already passed 5 years. And I don't know what you think of this, Stephanie. This happened the day before Valentine's Day. Do you think that's got any significance? February 13.
It's possible. I haven't thought about that really. I kind of think it was a coincidence.
Because they're young girls, and it's on the sort of lead up to, if you're a young girl and it's sort of what's happening on Valentine's Day. Do I have a boyfriend? You know what I mean? It's possibly leading up to that. If it was on Valentine's Day, I think it would be quite clear, but it just makes me wonder. Even the Oscar Pistorius case happened on in the early hours of Valentine's Day. So a lot of what was in process in what's the word? Sort of in the process of taking place. It's not really what I'm trying to say. It's basically, in play. That's the word I'm looking for. What is already in play was sort of some of the Valentines, like Christmas happens before Christmas kind of thing. You start getting, doing things, and do you know what I'm saying? So I just wonder, I think that is definitely something to consider.
Happen around the holidays.
Yeah. So before we go to your notes, just speaking generally, how many sets of suspects would you say there are? Like, in terms of your knowledge, how many separate suspects would you say there are?
That have been
like who are the prime suspects? Yeah.
I don't know them all by name. I would say there's at least been 8 or so. I don't have them to list them off for you. The newest were the Kleins, the father and son. Those are the most recent. There was Ron Logan, who's the landowner. They were found on the edge of his property that he passed away in January of COVID.
Yeah. You kind of had like a pre-alibi or something.
Yes. That's what what's law enforcement said, that he wasn't connected with the actual murder.
Yeah. What do you think?
I wanted to just say to Spirit, because she's having trouble hearing me again, and I wanted to tell you, Nick, that last night I could hear you and Lisa perfectly together. So I know the issue is with on my end. And I want to say, hopefully for the next one, my husband's going to buy me a microphone.
Oh, cool. Okay. Yay.
So bear with me one more time, and then he's gonna get me a microphone. I
Yeah,
told him, I said, I can't be doing this.
if you can't hear Stephanie, just try putting your volume wherever you are on, I guess, max. And Stephanie,
Yeah, I know what they're saying though. Then you're really loud, and when they want to hear me, they turn me up, and then you speak, and it's like So I totally understand, but I'm just grateful that I'll be able to fix my side of things.
So just to make things easier, I'm gonna sort of step out. I'm not gonna say anything. So I'm gonna give you a couple of minutes just to. So can you take us into CrimeCon? Like this one you did attend, or was it?
Yes,
you
there
were
were
there.
2 different ones that I attended, and then a follow-up Q&A that I was able to watch when I got home that must have been in a podcast room that I didn't go to. In the podcast room, they had a table set up, the German family, or I guess it's Patty family. Becky Patty and Mike Patty are the grandparents of Liberty German, one of the girls, and they had a table set up, and I, of course, went up to them and shared my condolences with them and told them that I'd been following their case and that was going to share their message and try to get people more aware of the case and to help out publicly where they can. And very appreciative. I got this. It says Abby and Libby, celebration of life. And then it says 2017. So I made a donation to them while I was there, and then I got this. So I thought I would wear it today in their honor. They're raising funds to make, I think it's a softball park, for in honor of the girls. So they had their little area set up, and I was able to talk to Mike Patty the most, and he is such, my first impression of him, meeting him, was that he's such a kind, loving, grieving grandfather. I know there's speculation that goes on when you're a family member of a case, but my feeling was that they're a lovely family. I don't want to say enjoyed talking to them, but it was good to share my thoughts with them.
So in terms of family members, was it grandparents on both sides, or what was it exactly?
No, it was this year. It was Libby's family. In the past, Abby's family has been a part of it as well this year.
Oh, okay.
There, I don't know that they go every year. I mean, this is going on 4, 5 years. So the Patty family has been coming. I don't know if it was their 4th time this year that they come to CrimeCon to spread awareness about the case. So they've been coming, and it was the Libby German's, I think it's her paternal grandparents. I may be mistaken. Someone correct me if I'm wrong. Her aunt, Tara German, was there, and Kelsey German, her sister, was there. Her big sister was there. And they...
Sure, so it is a... Yeah.
And then, so there were 2 different sessions. One of the sessions that I'll talk about first was the whole family that I just shared that was there was on stage with Paul Holes, and they had a discussion with him. They talked a little bit about genealogy and the case and the social media aspect of it. And then sorry, I'm petting my cat. And then the other, he's like rubbing against me. Then the other part that I saw, the other session I saw, was with Kelsey and 2 other sisters who had missing family members, and they were talking about how social media specifically affected their cases, either solving it, making it worse, and different things they experienced. And the other sisters were Julie Murray, who's the sister of Maura Murray, and I'll be able to share her case. I hadn't heard of it before CrimeCon. And then the other sister that was on stage with Kelsey was Sarah Turney, and she's the sister of Alyssa Turney. And I'll be sharing about the three sisters' cases.
Yeah. That's kind of becoming now an interesting conversation on its own. Is social media helping or hindering true crime? You know, in Summer Wells, the narrative is it's not helping. In Gabby Petito, it was a big help. You know what I mean? It's now also becoming a factor one way or the other.
Yeah, and I went, you know, to CrimeCon and watched these sessions before even like the most recent trial that we've been discussing and social media affecting that. And it's just more relevant than ever. It's not, it's definitely playing larger and larger roles.
That's kind of inevitable, the fact that you have a phone, you have internet connection, you have your feelings and opinions, and it's at your fingertips. And you're now part of communities, and if someone else is interested in something, not only is it likely that you would be, but also, I'm talking about someone in your community, if someone else is interested, not only is it likely that you will be, but they draw you into that rabbit hole, and you and them almost create a rabbit hole as well, in terms of you know what I mean? It creates all these, this labyrinth of rabbit holes kind of thing. The social media just does that. It creates rabbit holes. It's not just what something is, it's conspiracies, it's the social media narrative. Sometimes it's valid and sometimes it's not. Like, the question is, like, the juror that came forward in Johnny Depp, is that like a real thing? If it isn't, you've got to know. So if that juror isn't who he says he is, then you can see how cynical and, what's the word, duping TikTok actually is. It's like, let's invent a juror, create a rabbit hole around that, make a lot of money around that, ha ha ha, jokes on you, you know, if that's the case. If it is, I won't be surprised. If it isn't, okay, interesting, you know.
More catfishing.
Yeah. I've got to say, just in terms of my knowledge of this case, I think the catfishing thing is, to me, the most likely thing. That's just my opinion. Like, how do you get, to me, it's like, how did those two little girls end up where they were on that day, right? Like, just willy-nilly, like, did they really want to go there for a walk? You know what I mean? Just seems to me kind of unlikely. So if they didn't go there sort of on their own, if they didn't like just decide, let's go for a walk, then someone must have invited them. And what's the most likely way for that to happen, you know?
I think that in this particular time that they went to the bridge, that it was related to social media. We know that they had been in contact with someone who said that they were even supposed to meet them there that day. So it makes sense that they were going there possibly to meet someone. However, Mike Patty also shared that the Monon High Bridge Trail, he said it was a place known to be a hangout for young people, and Libby had been there many, many times before. So this wasn't just a random time that she decided to go there. That was kind of like a chill spot, a hangout spot.
When he says young people, what you know, does he mean kid? Like, so I mean, they were like, wasn't it 13 years old?
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's young. I don't know. 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 I don't I don't know, he didn't specify the ages, but he just shared that Libby in particular had been there many times to hang out with her friends.
Yeah. I think it was a 14-year-old, and I'm not, so if you were born in December, yeah, 14 and maybe 13, I think. Abigail was born in June, so I think she was 6 months shy, 4 or 5 months shy of her 14th birthday. So I think she was 13. The other girl, Liberty, was 15. That's how I understand it. So kind of quite an interesting age gap between them as well. I mean, at that age, a year is quite a lot, you know.
I guess it depends. My son's on a team and it's freshmen through seniors, and he gets along well with all of them. So I don't think a year is that big of a difference, but I know what you mean. The younger you are, the
Yeah. Yeah, it's actually maybe not that much. I must say, when you look at photos of them, the one seems to look a little bit smaller, but maybe it's just, yeah. So Abby's birthday is June 23rd, 2003. Liberty's is December 27, 2002. So it's really 6 months, not really that much. It really isn't that much. But you do have to kind of wonder, is it a situation that one girl is the leader between the two? Is it the older girl? Do you know what I mean?
yeah.
And that kind of thing. What were the friendship dynamics between the two? Yeah,
I don't think that
I must say,
Abby had a phone
when
yet
you take
either.
that aspect into it and you say, well, they hung out there anyway, then it starts becoming anything could happen, and it could have been any one scenario. Because you also take the situation of, if there were kids hanging out there anyway, then you could also have a random person like, oh, kids hang out here often, I'm going to see if I can X, Y, Z. You know what I mean? So in other words, not targeted. The question is, was this targeted, or was it kind of random, or was it semi-random? That's what definitely makes it a lot more complicated. Nan Sullivan says, wasn't it a day off school? What happened to that first suspect? I thought this was done now. There are 9 more suddenly. That's weird. Okay, so Stephanie, I think, do you want to take us through the Q&A? Did you want to start with that, the Q&A with the Delphi family?
Sure, I could start with that, with Susan Hendricks.
Yeah.
Okay, sure, I can start with that one. And
so I just want to get into the CrimeCon stuff, and then we can speak about it a bit more generally. But I think let's get the insights out and some of the new, fresh facts, and then we'll go into some of the more general stuff. Okay.
Nan, they were off from school that day. That's correct. The first session, actually, this was not a session that I saw. This was the extra one that I watched at home. Okay, just so you know.
Okay.
And this was with Susan Hendricks, who is an HLN anchor. She is also the one who had the Q&A with the Woodcocks that I talked about when we were discussing the Vallow Daybell case, the last CrimeCon session I was on. So she's kind of like giving all the extra Q&As and then sharing them with people who are watching online afterwards. So she asked, what are your feelings about CrimeCon? And Becky Patty, Libby's grandma, said, CrimeCon is probably one of the best things we have ever done. Every year we talk to people that haven't heard about our case, and there's people who come every year to see us. It's nice being here because it is so supportive of the families. People come up to you and say, "What can I do?" And that's what we're looking for. What can we do? And the follow-up question was asked, what can we do at home? How can we help? And Becky says, law enforcement wants anyone who's had contact with the Anthony underscore to contact them. The person
So if I can interrupt you, there. So within the second question, that is what the family's sort of focus is. That's what they are paying attention to, is this Anthony Shots profile. That's where they feel is the leading edge of this investigation, which I think is interesting. I agree with that. I think it's things fit together. I'm not saying it's like a smoking gun, but it certainly feels, I don't know, feels right. You went into the area a little bit of people panning for gold. Do you still
not panning for gold.
What are they doing?
Disposing of toxic chemical wastes.
Okay, sorry. Right. Okay, but they were sort of panning, hey.
But that is something that they do when they pan for gold, is they use that toxic material. And
okay.
I can tell you more about that after I go through this if you want.
Okay.
I did not bring that up to the families because it's kind of conspiracy. I don't know. And I didn't want to, it wasn't appropriate.
Yeah.
Okay. So I didn't talk about that with them.
Okay.
And they said the person that did create the Anthony Shots account, and this is ironic, he did live in Las Vegas for a while, where CrimeCon was this year, and was contacting people in our area. She's meaning in Delphi. So now that we're here, we'd like to reach people around here because Vegas is a long way from us. And a lot of people here in this area in Las Vegas don't know about our case. We would like to get it out to the people around here. And the follow-up, another question was, a transcript was released of the police interview with Keegan Klein, who had created the account. You were surprised by this, correct? And Becky said, well, we had been led to believe for several years that there was no social media connection. We knew there was something in December when they released the Anthony Shots account. But when they released that transcript, it became reality. It stated that the account had contact with Libby, and the police did tell Keegan Klein that he was the last to have contact with Libby on that day. So that was very hard to absorb.
That's huge.
Yes, that's big.
To say Keegan Klein was the last to have contact with Libby that day, that is huge. I mean, that is, anytime someone dies, especially someone who's murdered, the person that was the last to verifiably have seen them or have contact kind of automatically becomes a suspect, so that is really huge. I would love to know what the timestamp is of that communication,
Yeah. I want to say it was very recent to their going to the bridge because they were supposed to meet there. Even that day, I want to say, and I wish I could look that up.
So did are there any sort of, have they said what the communication was? They're saying there was communication, but did they say?
They did not say what it was. But I had read, which isn't evidence, but I had read, I don't remember where, that it was about meeting up that day. But I don't know if anybody in chat remembers hearing about that. That's
Well,
why.
that would make sense. I mean, it would make sense that are you guys ready to meet, or I'll meet you in an hour, and then it's like, okay, so isn't it mystery solved kind of thing? To me, usually a thing like this isn't just innocent. It's not like one dude was walking around, and it's especially when it becomes this mystery and it's hard to solve. Often in a situation like that, there's planning and there's subterfuge, right? By the way, just so people know, the 13th of February was a Monday. So it was a day when other people would I don't know, would that have been a holiday for everybody, or would that have been was it just a day that the school?
No, I think they had earned like an extra February period day off because they had given so many for snow days and they hadn't utilized them all, so that they were given this day off. And I don't know if the teachers had like a professional development or not, but the kids had off from school.
Yeah, Zircon says, I thought they were to meet. But the thing I'm just trying to, yeah, the thing I'm trying to sort of get at is, if this is a contrived meeting, and then you would, how do you exclude parents from sort of stumbling on the scene or hanging around or whatever, and not even parents, just other adults? Well, if you go there on a Monday and it's a work day, people need to be at work, adults are at work. And so, you know what I mean? In a situation like that, that's how it's like the kids are around, the parents are working. Not, that wouldn't be on a weekend though. On a weekend, you would run the risk of, like, what's going on here, kind of thing. And so that it also makes you think that it's a targeted thing, online targeting, catfishing.
The next question says, there were rumors that this may be social media related. And then, as you said, you were led to believe it wasn't social media related. Why was that? Did investigators specifically tell you that it wasn't? And she said, yes. As a matter of fact, I had a girl who came up to me last night at the meet and greet, and she said, I have a question for you. Why in 2018, when there was an officer with you at that Q&A, did the law enforcement officer tell us, no, it was checked out and it wasn't social media related? So we were told at the time, no, it wasn't. And the thing of it is, I had to hang my hat on that because I had to believe it wasn't through social media. Now I feel if it was, then I failed because I didn't catch it. So it just made it harder. And she wipes a tear away from her eye. So they're feeling, my impression was that she was feeling frustrated that it was because something was leaked that this has come out, and law enforcement had led them to believe and said to them, we've checked out those avenues. It's not related to social media. So that is a contradiction, unless they found out about this afterwards.
It may have been a ploy by law enforcement to say that, and then I don't know if they knew about this then, but if they did, then it lures the person out to kind of continue whatever he's doing. In other words, he gets a false sense of security. And I think law enforcement often does that. They don't say anything. They don't give certain things away. And the idea is to make it seem like, oh, I got away with this. Or, do you know what I mean? In other words, they hold the cards close to them. But I don't know if it always works. Because if you had to think of it in another way, if at the time, and again, I don't know all the details. I don't know at what point they sort of homed in on this Anthony Shots account. But if at the time, they'd said, Anthony shot, guys, please look at this. Before the case became this somewhat of a phenomenon, someone may have put their hand up and come forward and said, I've been talking to him. And often what happens in these high-profile cases is they become so high-profile that someone who does know something just becomes scared of being associated with it. And that's the benefit of not hindsight, but live investigation is before it's exploded, you say, well, we need help. And people are like, I'm in the community, I'm in the area, I care, and I know something, and then they come forward. And then there's not that whole kind of contamination of, because there's also a lot of people come forward later on that because it's not so high profile, it's meaningless. They come forward with nonsense, with those fake leads. So I'm just saying it may be time also for law enforcement to consider the negative social media impact of stuff in that people feel like I want to be private, and so early on in a case, maybe you do want to play a few cards before the wave breaks, before people start running away and wanting to hide away. Cotton Star says,
go ahead. He said, ask yourself why the video of Bridge Guy looks like it's from 1996. And I think that the people who were breaking down the video purposefully blurred some parts out that they didn't want the public to see or know about because they wanted to hold more of their cards close to them, like the weapon, perhaps.
Yeah.
So it was very grainy.
No.
What are your thoughts?
And I think you've kind of got to ask the question when you're dealing, and I think it's a tough question. I wonder what Cotton Star thinks about this. When you've got a case that's starting to go cold or threatening to go cold, that's basically unsolved, and you say, well, we're now at the 3-year mark, now it's 4 years, now it's 5 years. I think you've got to start saying, law enforcement, has what you've done so far worked? Is what you are doing working? And they may be in this place of they're holding their cards and they're very clever, but what have you actually achieved thus far? And it's quite a difficult one because you can lose a case, but I think that you've got to measure losing a case against trying to be so careful that loses you the case. I would rather a case goes to trial and you lose than you are so careful and then ultimately nothing ever happens. And there have been quite a few cases like that. There have been quite a few cases where it ultimately never even goes to trial in a real sense, like John Benet Ramsey, Madeleine McCann, Summer Wells, I guess, in a sense, Barry Morphew, and all these. It's like, like if you say yes, but they didn't have enough evidence or whatever. What about just having it go to trial where it's supposed to go? That's where investigations are supposed to end up. That's the point of justice, is that you kind of have a trial, and this idea that you have this subtext to a case that goes on behind closed doors about holding cards. I don't know if it's fair to families. I don't know if it's I think one's got to just ponder the judgment of folks in law enforcement. Sometimes you don't have enough, but maybe in the course of the trial, it'll come together. And someone might say something, or
I could really sense Becky's frustration, and just her husband seemed to have more faith still. So they were kind of at different points of view about it. But it would.
Cotton Star says, why isn't a grand jury being called yet? That's the question.
Have you done anything more with the Kleins?
I don't know. It blew up. I think around February, and then it sort of blew over again. It's sort of
because I went in April, and it's now June, which isn't that long, but they were really searching for more information about the social media aspect.
Yeah. Okay, do you want to continue?
Yeah, and then the Susan Hendricks asked Libby's aunt, Tara, what did you think about this investigation? Because you had seen this Snapchat video. The world was able to see this person, this figure. And she said, we try not to get our hopes up on one particular person. If we focus on one person, we may be missing out on someone else. Just because these are terrible, horrible people, it doesn't mean they're our terrible, horrible people or person.
Yeah.
And then
the impression I get is, sorry to interrupt, the impression I get is the Anthony Schott stuff kind of came out basically just prior to the 5-year anniversary. So it's like, oh, it's the 5-year anniversary. Oh yes, we're investigating this. Oh yes, okay, this is what we know. It's kind of like ad lib. And so, the other side to law enforcement is, and lawyers, and this is something I kind of really, that kind of shocked me sometimes when I was sitting in a murder trial, you sort of realize this isn't like the full-time job of this lawyer. He's got like lots of cases he's got to deal with, and he only has so much time to think about this one and so much time, and then they go on to the next one. And if you like writing full-time about a case, you sort of realize, wow, even the lawyer dealing with this doesn't actually know this, that, and the other thing, because they've only got a limited amount of time. So in terms of law enforcement, you mustn't think, I mean, it's obvious what I'm going to say now, but you mustn't think that police department is just kind of trying to figure out that case. They've moved on to other cases. That case is there, but they've moved on to other cases, and it's easy for time to go by and you just don't get round to it. And then, when the anniversary comes around, we know this. And that is exactly how cases go cold. And that's why I say, I think law enforcement maybe need to think about this whole thing in a bit of a different way and kind of go, this thing about holding your cards, you might want to play cards earlier, because you're going to eventually need to move on to other cases. And that's just the way it is. And, yeah, that's why I say this Anthony Schott's thing was revealed at the time. The people who were communicating with him, I think, would have been happy to come forward, And
now they're probably in college, like,
yeah.
And if they're not paying attention,
yeah,
it would have been much easier to trace the people within a closer period of time.
Yeah.
They asked Mike, the grandfather, have you been watching and following social media, or do you avoid it, or do you find support? And he said, I have very little interaction with social media. It's just not my space. My family keeps me informed. There's really only a few that make a lot of noise, and I know they've said some pretty horrible things about me, but it doesn't bother me. It really doesn't. People can say what they want, but nobody's ever come up to my face to say anything. But I encourage them to do so, because we'd have a good conversation. I have nothing to hide. The truth is on my side. The people who know me know me.
It's quite interesting how, this is the Delphi case, and how much social media is just part of that discussion already,
Yeah, it was a lot and that was their purpose going there this time, was to put out the message about this lead that's new to them, whether or not it's new to law enforcement.
You know what? I think we are in like a phase of true crime where I think there was a phase in true crime where DNA was like the smoking gun, and DNA was this is what everyone spoke about. I don't know if the penny has dropped. It should have, but the new DNA, I think, is it's sort of like metadata stuff, like what's on your phone, timestamp stuff. Like in the Chris Watts case, the phone data review.
Yeah,
that's
like
the new DNA.
The cell phone pings and.
Yeah, absolutely. Because that's saying where you were, what your patterns were, all of that. And although it's to some extent circumstantial, I mean, if you take the Barry Morphew case, the digital footprint in that case is like the case. That's the case, right? And I think you're going to see more and more cases where it's about that, but also about social media. What was this person saying on social media? You're going to get the idea in terms of future investigations. Finding out who someone was is going to be more about what you know about them on social media than maybe what a friend of them knows. And I don't know, it almost turns the social media monster into something even more monstrous, because social media is like not reality, but it is a certain kind of reality for some of us. Should I say this? Someone that I was talking to was like, "But you still in a relationship?" And I was like, "No, I'm not." And they were like, "No, but on Facebook it says you're in a relationship." So it's like, in a weird way, it's like what's on social media trumps you and reality, even in terms of you and your reality, right? So I'm just saying, there's someone was like referring me to my own social media. That's the reality. And it's like, anyway, you know what I'm saying? So it's like,
Yeah.
But there's an aspect to it where when you deal with social media in terms of someone's, I'm talking about in a crime situation, in terms of someone's interactions, then other social media gets involved and they take that to pieces, and it can go anywhere. That's what I don't like. DNA, at least you can say, what does the evidence say, this, that, or the other? But as soon as you kind of going, okay, this was this person's social media, and Gabby Petito, I think, was quite a good example. Brian Laundrie, also quite a good example. That social media you can kind of look at as is and see something, but someone else will see something else. And that's how you kind of just invent. You can invent whatever you like. You can also invent fake social media. You can say, this was from this person's social media, but it's actually not. You can say, this was from that person's social media and they deleted it. Actually, it's not. And then that becomes kind of like a new narrative.
Using their social media.
Yeah. So social media is, and the whole metadata digital footprint thing is a fascinating new dimension to true crime, but it's also one that can be counterfeited. So, for example, let's say you've committed a crime, and your victim was on Facebook. You can go into their Facebook if you've got access and have that person have life after death when they actually didn't. And in fact, in the Barry Morphew case, that is exactly what's being sort of presented as a possibility, is that did Suzanne Morphew really make 20 friend requests the day before she died? Did she really do that? So I'm just saying, at the same time that it's a very useful tool, it's also something that can do the opposite. It can be used to counterfeit evidence. It can be used to prolong the actual life of a person when they weren't alive. It can be used to say things like take the voice of a victim and put something there, and it's actually not true. So it's a double-edged sword, social media and true crime. I'm talking about as evidence. It's a difficult thing. And yeah, you have this profile, Anthony Shots, and people must have interacted with him, and now they're not coming forward. That's the other side of it. Is like, I don't want to be associated with that, but this is a murder investigation. But no, I'd rather keep my privacy. So I don't know. One way to get around that is you can phone in anonymously, but that's not how people really think. It's like, I don't want to get involved. This is history kind of thing.
Cotton Star said the problem is 5 years later, we still don't have the autopsy report or even the manner of death. These are ingredients for corruption. And I agree with him.
Yeah.
I agree.
I don't know whether that is, I don't know whether that kind of thing is like, yeah, but I don't know whether that is like, we don't want to upset the family. I would imagine, I don't know, it's quite difficult to say. Let me ask you this question, because I've seen this happen quite a lot. There are autopsy reports, and then they sort of say, this is really sort of disturbing, and we don't want the family to, and then and then the question is that the real reason? Maybe it is, or is it because it's legally sensitive, and then the person who's the perpetrator could actually use, if it became public knowledge, the person could add this to his narrative. Because often in a thing like, let me give you a good example. Often in a situation where you want to prosecute someone, something like autopsy is going to give away something like these are the cards that we have. This is what we absolutely know. And a good example in the John Benet Ramsey case was the pineapple. So if you put certain people on trial and you had them testify and you had them say she went to sleep and blah, blah, blah and everything. If you then brought out the autopsy report and you said, but she actually ate pineapple, and let's say you can kind of verify it and say she couldn't have eaten pineapple anywhere else except at home and except after, let's say, 11 o'clock at night or whatever. Now you've cast doubt on the version that that person gave. I'm just saying the counter to that is, if you put it out into the public that they found pineapple, well, now you can now, if let's say it goes to trial, you can say, oh yeah, yeah, I kind of got up a little bit later and I had pineapple. I left it there on the counter. Do you know what I mean? It becomes part of the narrative. It's not a way to test the veracity of someone's version, because you've now played your card, So I get that. It's just a little bit difficult. We are investigators ourselves, and so like without that, your hands are tied. Without things like that, there's very little you can do. If you think about the John Benet Ramsey case, if they'd taken the autopsy out of that story, you would have very little to work with.
Yeah, we haven't.
And so that's what we have. Yeah,
autopsy has not been released to the public.
Yeah.
And,
yeah.
If it has been leaked, I have not seen it. And I just wanted to respond to Brianna. She said that she thought that it was a blunt, sharp object. I don't think that they said that was the cause of death. I don't think they released the cause of death. There might have been some staging of the crime scene, but they haven't said what the cause of death was. So I don't know that's what it was.
Sunflowers asks, is there DNA evidence in this case?
Mm-hmm. I'll share a little bit about that after.
Okay. Do you want to go on?
I think it's not like it. My understanding is it's not body fluid. It's something like hair. Found at the crime scene that didn't belong to the victims. Let's talk about the panel. And was there something that stood out to you last night? A question or comment? And Mike Patty said, yes, with Paul Holes in our discussion. Sometimes you just need a pair of fresh eyes. And I couldn't agree with him more. I'm sure Paul Holes and I will hook up and have some of those discussions. And then I can bring that back to the investigative team. So they exchanged their phone numbers. And I think that going to CrimeCon has provided another avenue and resources that the family has made connections with other people that can help them look at the case maybe from a different angle and objectively not being in that town.
Yeah.
So I think that
Zircon says she thinks it's dog hair.
There might have been. I pretty sure that well, I can tell you why it's assumed that it's human hair after.
Okay.
And they asked Becky, do you still think that it was someone, or do you think it was someone local? And she said, I don't know. And local doesn't mean just Delphi. It can mean all of the local counties, and it could very well be. Or with this Anthony Shots thing, it could be somebody that's not local. And then Kelsey said, I agree, we're keeping an open mind.
You missed 2 questions.
Did I?
Yeah.
Oh, I did. Sorry. Okay. Why didn't the police put out the car at the CPS building information earlier? Do you know? And the family members shook their heads no. And Mike Patty said the standard answer is they're trying to protect the integrity of the investigation. That could have been part of the strategy there. So, and then he says, and then she asked, do the police keep you in the loop, or do you know what the rest of us know about? And he said, I would say yes, but no major revelations. I don't want to know and make a slip up. So I don't think the family knows.
Yeah. I must say, whenever I hear they're trying to protect the integrity of the investigation, that is what you heard with the Ramseys throughout the early time. Oh, we can't talk to the media. We're trying to protect the investigation. That's what you hear constantly with the McCanns, even 15 years later. 15 years later, no, we can't say anything. We're trying to protect him. Yeah, you know what? The investigation hasn't gone terribly well. So, maybe the integrity isn't really a factor here. That's also, I think that's also kind of a factor in Summer Wells. We're trying to protect the integrity of the investigation. I don't know whether that's not kind of just a cop-out that the investigation, there's not really much integrity to look after because nothing's really happening. So I must say, when I hear those words, I'm like, it kind of just sounds a bit meaningless to me. It's like, I'm just not going to communicate kind of thing,
Well, it's been the 5-year anniversary, and even Paul Holes, my impression from him talking at the session was that he thinks this is a cold case. This is a cold case. They keep saying it's not a cold case. It's not a cold case. And
I must say, I think when you pass 2 years, then I think it's hard to, for example, I've got a horrible feeling that Suzanne Morphew is cold case material. Like you can't tell me by now that they didn't find anything up in those mountains. So it kind of makes me wonder, just in terms of law enforcement and the prosecution side, when they said, we're just about to find something, and so we're going to cancel the prosecution. You've got to now actually ask yourself, was that true? Was that a real thing, or was it just like a dodge,
Well, I haven't heard any follow-up on that, and I actually got a text from someone who lives out there saying that way up in the mountains, it's been 50 degrees where they would need to look, and that they should be able to get to where they need to go now. So
yeah, I mean, it's June right now. It's June. It's summer. It's June. Yeah. So what's going on? And like you hope that something's going to happen, but so far it doesn't look very good at all. It really doesn't look very good at all.
The Anthony Shots is an account, and the 2 people behind it are still persons of interest, as far as I know, Brianna. But
are there 2 people behind it?
Yeah, I think the Keegan Klein and his father Tony Klein had access to his account and had been using it as well. Neither are good people.
Something I remember with Amanda Knox vaguely, though. So, I'm a little bit fuzzy on the details, but I seem to remember remember, all of this happened with Amanda Knox in 2007, so it's really going back a long way, right? Also 15 years ago. But what I remember with that is she was on MySpace, and her account was subsequently, I think, deleted. And the question then is, I remember dealing with this, as I say, I'm a bit fuzzy on it now, but as far as I can remember, somebody got access to her account. I think it was a family member, it could have been a friend, and the account was deactivated or whatever. And one wonders whether something like that couldn't have happened here. That, because, like, if you think about it, if you think about your Instagram, Stephanie, or like, does your mom have access to your Instagram, kind of thing? You know what I mean? Can your mom get into your Instagram? Yeah. So
my mom, no.
With most,
my husband,
yeah, no.
probably.
So most people, the answer is no. But unless it was a situation of, I need you to deactivate this account, here's my password, thanks very much, I'm in jail, would you mind just getting rid of it? Thanks a lot. And I mean, how many people who are innocent would sort of say, can you just shut down my social media? That's quite an interesting question, because I don't think it's necessarily, I'm innocent, so leave my Facebook profile up, because you could be innocent, and it's like, I don't want a lot of strangers on social media attacking me. I am actually innocent, and you think I'm not, and it's not fair. So that's also a valid counter argument. So again, there's the double-edged sword of social media. Yeah.
And Bria brought up a good point that not only was perhaps the account used by multiple people, it wasn't even a real account. It was them portraying themselves as a real person that exists, but they are not that person. This young, attractive looking man who happened to be, I think, a police officer. So that was interesting. Do you feel like the Anthony Shots information is being put out enough in the community? I live nearby. This is someone who was asking a question online that they shared. I live nearby, and when I mentioned that account and info, no one seems to know what I'm talking about. And Kelsey said, no, I don't think it's being shared enough in Delphi, definitely not locally. I recently talked with my youth in my church, and they hadn't heard. Even people who were friends with my sister and Abby say they haven't heard about it. I found that
it's kind of unacceptable.
Yeah. I mean, they're in Las Vegas trying to spread the word about.
Yeah. So I mean, that is exactly that thing of, so when the case is happening, like, it's kind of new, and again, the question is, when did they find out about this Anthony Shots? And if they were holding that card back, by the time they play it now, everyone's moved on with their lives, and even people who were there don't really pay any attention. And if they do, it's like, I'm gonna go to this party on campus. I'm not going to worry about that kind of thing, The other side of that is also, what does that, like, what does that say about you if you were also, like, you wouldn't want your correspondence to be known. Like, if you say, yes, I did correspond with that person. Oh, so are you this user? Because we've got these interactions, right? And then you say, oh no, I'm user Pixie77. Oh, so you Pixie77, you said blah 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 blah. Then that can kind of theoretically become public knowledge, and it's from all those years ago, and it's so I think it's that stuff that is in the shadows, and other people are like, I don't want people to know this, so it remains in the shadows.
Yeah. Do you want me to do the down the hill session?
Yeah, please.
Okay. That was the session that had Paul Holes, who is now an HLN contributor and cold case investigator, and he helped use the new DNA genealogy to identify the Golden Gate killer. So that's like one of the famous cases he worked on.
Terry says, how much crime is there really in Delphi for law enforcement to be consumed with? Yeah, it's a good point. I wouldn't say none, but you know,
I don't think they had experience either.
Yeah, it's I think a little bit of like a bolder situation, but you've also got to say when you've put all your resources on something, you have investigated it, and then you reach the end of that road. What are you supposed to do? You're supposed to sit with the file in your lap and just sort of, like, I'm working on it. But it's like, I don't know if you've ever been in that situation when you're supposed to study for an exam and you've got the book open, you're not studying, but it's sort of there. So it's like, I am studying. You know what I mean? You're kind of fooling yourself. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So anyway, it's something that's easy to play a Monday morning quarterback on, where you say you should have released that information earlier. I mean, they didn't know that this case would end up being unsolved for as long. We know that now. They didn't know that then. But what I would hope is that law enforcement apply sort of intertextuality. So you in a case and you say, you know what we did in that case, it didn't work. So in this case, we need to do it differently. Like Summer Wells. What has happened with Summer Wells? We are, I think, about 10 days shy of the of that anniversary, and it's like, what has happened there? I think a mistake made in that case was not having the public join the searches early on. I think that is a very, very big mistake. Like literally excluding them, I think, yeah.
Bria said, apparently the man doesn't necessarily resemble Keegan Klein. They are now thinking it might have been the father. Heard that, but not sure. The build of Bridge Guy, the image that we saw, to me, does not look like the same body type of Keegan Klein. It doesn't. It doesn't mean that he wasn't involved, but I don't think that he specifically looks like Bridge Guy at all, based on the
I think it does.
You've seen. Do you?
I think it does. Yeah. I just
Okay, then we
mean,
disagree.
no, I just mean in a basic way. I'm not saying it's like a dead ringer. I'm just saying, is this guy generally sort of heavy set? Is this guy, you know what I mean? Like the basic stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying it's like, wow, I recognize him. I'm just saying in a basic way, does it resemble him or not? That's all.
Mm-hmm.
To me, you can't take that video and go, this is like absolute evidence, because it's crystal clear. It's kind of like the CCTV.
Like,
yeah, it doesn't really look like anyone, but you can
person.
But you can draw a couple of basic inferences. One, is it a man or a woman? It's a man. Two, is it a extremely old man or an extremely young man? And the answer is it's definitely not an extremely old man. It's definitely not like a teenager, like a spindly young little kid, right? So that's taking you that far. And then is it, and then you can fine tune it a little bit more, but you can't fine tune it so far where you say definitively this or that. And to me, I don't think it excludes Keegan Klein. That's my opinion. I don't think it excludes him. When looking at that, to me, it doesn't look like it could be Keegan Klein's dad. It doesn't look like an old dude. It looks like not an old dude. That's just my opinion. Yeah.
See, and that's perception too.
Yeah, I mean it's difficult with fuzzy images. It's always difficult because are you seeing what you want to see? And a really good example of that is in the Letitia Stork case. You can look at that CCTV with a microscope and not actually see this figure going back in the house, and it turned out that he did. Gannon did go back. He did get out the truck and went back into the house. And so now you're saying the CCTV footage is absolute proof. It's not. It's not. It's definitely not proof. But you can't hold it up as like DNA or something. It's fuzzy evidence. That's the most that it is. It's guide. I always find that quite funny because in true crime they always say, like, when you really want to criticize a case or a lawyer or a judgment, and you say, "Cheapers, what do you actually want here? Do you need like video evidence of something actually taking place?" And then there actually is sometimes video evidence, and that's not enough. You've got CCTV and whatever is actually video evidence. What makes a case ultimately is the mosaic. It's the mosaic that connects everything together. Timeline, dynamics, identity, motive, circumstances, the evidence itself, all those things. And if you don't put them all together, well, then you end up where you end up, But taking any of those items separately and you say, okay, this is it, this is the smoking gun, and then you still don't have the case solved. I don't know. In terms of that video, it's useful evidence, but it's definitely not like that's just part of the mosaic and maybe not even one of the big parts. But yeah, I don't look at that and go, that's not Keegan. I definitely don't do that.
To me, it doesn't look like him, but it's also.
Are you like, it's definitely not him?
So no, I'm not that comfortable to say it's definitely not him, but it's also from 5 years ago, and we're looking at not Anthony Shots, Keegan Klein today. So I would have to go back and see, what did he look like 5 years ago? Maybe he was.
I look at that and I say it could be him. I don't know if it is him, but I look at it and I say it could be him. I must also tell you, just in a basic way, that people who are overweight can change. So you can look older or whatever. Like, I had a girlfriend who had a son who was really overweight, like huge, right? And he was like, she was in her 40s and he was a teenager. And then I didn't see her for quite a long time, and then I saw a picture of her later, and she was with this man, and I was like, who's this guy? And it turned out to be her son, and it was like, whoa. I didn't, it was like, I don't actually even recognize him is so different, where it changed from being so overweight to not so overweight. And it was like hard even to say what his age was. So things like weight also play into that. When someone is thin, anyway, weight plays with the mind in terms of age as well. I must tell you, when I swam, I think last night, and there's one other guy in the pool, and we were talking about triathlon, because triathlon that was supposed to be now, like tomorrow, has just been postponed. And anyway, he said, "Oh, were you going to do that?" And I said, "No." And then anyway, we spoke a little bit, and he said, "What age group are you?" And I said, "Oh, yeah, I'm 50." And he said, "50? You look 35." So I'm just saying, stuff like that is quite inexact. It's definitely quite inexact. Yeah, I mean, thanks for the compliment. Thanks for the compliment, but you're wrong.
Yeah, you were at 35 side. That was good.
Thought Criminal says, I lost 70 pounds in about a year and a half. Good for you. Care to share your secret?
Yes.
Yeah, well done.
Secret.
One thing I can tell you,
So,
running is a good way of transforming yourself. Like you use a lot more energy with running than with almost anything else. So Karina says, I think the accused two are believable scapegoats. It's either corruption or distraction. Yeah, I think there's always the temptation to think this isn't being solved because of corruption. That's definitely hard to not think that.
So, and for the Down the Hill session, Mike Patty started out by sharing their objective, their purpose, and he says, "We try not to ride the roller coaster of emotions every time there's a new person of interest." And I kind of feel like it's been a rotating person of interest. Now we're on to the clients. We're waiting on the call from law enforcement that says he's been arrested. We've come on this platform to communicate this out to the public, to ask for your help, to ask if anyone has had any interaction with the Anthony Schott social media accounts. It's a method to get the info out. And then they showed a clip of Keegan Kline being interviewed by an HLN correspondent. And Keegan Kline stated, "I feel like I'm being harassed constantly. I've given them my DNA, hair follicle test, done everything they've wanted me to do." So my question is, if they have his DNA, is it not able to be compared to what they have at the scene? Is it not enough? I mean, it's not like he said, I mean, they took not just DNA, they also did a hair follicle test.
I don't know. I don't know if it's a case of, remember, this was an outdoor crime scene, so I don't like, and we don't know the autopsy results, so I don't know. I don't know if
they were found this day.
Yeah. But in the, I guess I don't know enough about this case to speak very authoritatively about it, but I do know quite a lot about the West Memphis 3 case, where 3 boys were found in the Robin Hood Hills, in those woods, and they'd been out there for a couple of hours, right? And as far as I know, they found no DNA there, right? So what that suggests is that when you are in an outdoor crime scene, that DNA can be quite tricky to contain, because you must remember you've got lots of things taking place. You've got wind taking place, right? So if you like lying out there on the ground and the wind's blowing, well, that's a factor, which you don't really have in a contained crime scene like the inside of a house or a car. Another factor is sunshine. The sun shining on DNA has an impact. Weather, temperature also would have an impact. I don't know I really don't know the answer to this. I don't know. I know this happened in February. I don't know if very cold temperatures could have an impact on DNA one way or the other. But what I do know is outdoor crime scenes tend to be very tricky in terms of that. I don't know whether it's a case of an incomplete profile. I don't know whether it's like that's the issue. In other words, in the John Benet Ramsey case, you've got incomplete profiles that can't exclude or include Patsy or Burke, right? Now think about that.
Right.
You can't include them, but you also can't exclude them. So there's something there, but it's not, you know what I'm saying? So that's based on I think the Bode Labs thing. Cottonstar knows a bit about that. But so the question here is, obviously I think the DNA doesn't definitively include him, but it may be a case that it doesn't exclude him either. I don't know. I don't have access to that. But in situations of, DNA is often, in external crime scenes, DNA is often, it's like a reduced sample, things like that. I don't know if there are other factors at play, like water. There was water nearby, so I don't know whether that's a factor, but there are cases where people have used water like the Jodi Arias case, where water was used to wash the victim and wash themselves. That's definitely possible here. I don't know.
And Paul Hulse said, it is important to get an answer not only for the victims and their families, but to keep the public safe. This is a dangerous man. Some criminals are able to stop this behavior for a period of time. They commit crimes in clusters. It's important to keep law enforcement investigators on the right track. Law enforcement is wrong until they're right. I've been wrong. In the case of the Golden Gate Killer, for 2 years we had the wrong guy. Biases creep in. DNA evidence showed us we were wrong.
Well, there's a great example where DNA came back and kind of, what's the word, won its medal kind of thing. DNA can be a really good piece of evidence, but there's a really good example where that happened. So, I think a question to ask here is the Delphi case a DNA case? And I would say it's not. I could be wrong, but it's a question. Is the Delphi case a DNA case? I don't think it is. It could be, but I don't think it is.
Yeah, I don't know. But yeah, it is. It's scary to think that he's out there. As Thought Criminal says, he killed 2 people in broad daylight in a public park. Granted, it was a Monday, but I mean, he didn't know who was going to be there.
Yeah. Nan Sullivan says it's a tech case. Bria says, who knows if he has done this before? Yeah. I've got to say, it's cases like this that scare the crap out of me. It's like where something happens and then it's like, well, did they catch him? And then it's like, no, that scares the crap out of me. Because imagine if it's you. Imagine if somebody does this to you, and then it's like, we don't know who killed you. Sorry, we just don't know. And this is not the only case that's like this. I must say, Summer Wells, I thought was a slam dunk. I thought this is going to be ridiculously easy, and it's like, what the F is going on here? What the hell is going on that nothing is going on? And that's why I say, this idea, this notion of justice is not it's not guaranteed. Justice is really a rare thing. We think it's a given. It's really not. Even when somebody is caught and they go on trial and they're sentenced, it's sometimes hard to say whether that was actually right. Like with Oscar Pistorius, for example, he first would only have served 10 months. Then now it's sort of 10 years. I think it actually went up to 13 years or something, but he might come out on parole early. But even then, you say 13 years for murder. Is that right? Someone lost their life at 30-something years of age. Is 13 years enough to pay for that? Is anything enough to pay for that? So, like, justice just feels like this, to use a metaphor from this story, a bridge too far, Karina says he had almost knocked Libby out. She chased him to a garage. Who are you talking about there? Who saw that? Okay. Do you want to go on through that?
So, Becky, every day on her social media, she's on Instagram. Every day she posts. She says she's not giving up hope. Every day she posts, "Today is the day," to her social media accounts, and she does every single day. She posts, "Today is the day." And Kelsey German said, I know even when we find the person who did this, it will be a new stage of grief. Like, this is really real. And Paul said, trauma is always there. It's a traumatic event knowing who took their loved ones away. You have a name and a face. An answer leads to justice in our legal system, the sentence, the penalty. But is that penalty enough for the crime? It does not eliminate the tragedy of the crime. And that's what you were just sharing.
Yeah.
And
it's interesting, Kelsey German saying, when you actually find the person, it's like, this is really real. So it's almost like, my mom died when I was 17, and because literally I saw her one day and the next she was gone. There was no, I didn't see a crime scene. I never saw her. Just like one day she was there, the next day it was gone. She was gone. And grief kind of has this way of like, part of you, I used to have dreams where I thought she was actually just somewhere else, because you're trying to figure it out. And I would imagine in a crime situation like this as well, it's like, this doesn't make any sense. This person was here, now they're gone. And because it's not resolved, it's even worse. It's like, you say, okay, something did happen to her, but we don't know what, we don't know who. And so there's this weird unreality because you simply don't know. And because you don't know, it doesn't feel real, which is horrible. It's just horrible. Unreal. I don't know what is worse, the unreality or the reality. I really don't know what is worse. And that is that's the part of true crime and this whole search for justice that is so kind of compelling, but also terrifying. Is that despite all your efforts, despite all your attention, despite all the evidence, despite everything you know, you can still not know. I find that so troubling. It's like, how can you not know? How can you not find, with everyone paying attention, with everyone caring, how can you still not, find your way to something? Thanks, Karina. Zircon says limbo, yeah.
Yeah, a psychic who she watched.
Oh, okay.
Thank you, Karina. Becky said, it will be a relief to know he can never do this to anybody else. Another family won't go through what we are. I can't say what other emotions there will be. And Mike said, if we find out the suspect is deceased, it will be a frustration not to have our day in court. And something that Becky shared, she said after Libby had passed, she, when she was alive, she was always leaving sticky notes around the house for them. And she had found one that she had left behind on her sun visor. So when she pulled it down, it said, and I put it on a sticky note, how funny. The sticky note said, I love you. Thank you for all you do for me and Kelsey. And she said that, she'd been finding those just after the fact. And I guess she also had left sticky notes to her teachers and thanking them for encouraging her. And Mike Patty shared, I remember I was just starting to teach Libby how to drive. We were going up and down the driveway. So
yeah,
just give you just like a normal 14-year-old starting to do those milestones.
To me, that speaks about their vulnerability as young girls, is that their age. If you just put together a couple of these dots, their age, social media, and then also that when I talk about the age, I'm specifically talking about that age, you're not an adult, you're not doing adult things, but you sort of want to transition in that way. And there are all sorts of behaviors that play into that. One of them is learning to drive. But there are also things where you are trying to be a grown-up in other ways in terms of the opposite sex and so on. But that makes you vulnerable to these people online, and that's why I think the age and the fabric overall, to me, just supports that thing.
Yeah.
The other thing that I think is worth thinking about, I don't know how much people have thought about this, but the fact is you've got two victims here, not just one, which kind of suggests the person you're talking about here is like kind of greedy in a certain sense. And if you want to again apply that to the West Memphis 3 case, I don't know how safe it is talking about it, because the legal situation now is, I don't know if it is in flux, but maybe let's, for the sake of argument, say it is in flux. Anyway, in terms of I've written a book about West Memphis 3, and what I believe happened there was literally a case of a person being greedy for a certain kind of ambition for themselves, and they took the life of one of these children in order to jumpstart their lives. And you could kind of argue that that is a spiritual greediness, in a sense. It's a kind of existential thing, but based on greed and based on insufficiency. You could argue a lot of that same stuff is taking place in the killer of these two girls, but almost in a within not so much a spiritual side, but to the sexual identity side. That somebody is maybe a sexual loser in his own life, who's maybe not very attractive, who's maybe got all sorts of deviant things going on, and so the fact that he's now presented with two young girls, that's what he wants. What I'm trying to get at is, it's not just one person that's a victim here, it's two, and that is actually telling you something about the killer that's worth thinking about as well. And if it's a sexual crime, which I think it is, the fact that the victims are not just one but two is telling you what kind of deviant person we're talking about. Is quite a high level. Do you get what I'm saying? And then if you take that and you say, I accept that, then you've got to say, well, who then fits that profile? And I don't know if it's an old dude, because it's like, so you're not even on online much. You're not even on. I'm not saying old people aren't. I'm just saying, in terms of that sexual identity, it tends to be something that is more. How can I put it? It's more in play with younger men and the whole online environment. I'm not saying it's not a factor at all with other people or older people, just that it's far more in play with younger men, I guess. And I am making generalizations. It's just you are trying to come up with out of the ghost of not knowing, you're trying to come up with some kind of profile that crystallizes. And that's just another way of thinking about it. Marianne says Garrett Kirk was a POI, person of interest. The monsters under my bed played a video of him and a dog was barking. Was this dog's hair tested? That's quite an interesting point. That definitely is an interesting thing, is if you said, is dog's hair, who had a dog? Did Keegan Klein have a dog? Did Libby have a dog? It's not that a dog, if it is dog's hair, it's not that that's necessarily irrelevant. In the John Benet Ramsey case, there was beaver's hair. The question wasn't, I think, did a beaver run through the house? It was, what clothing was Patsy wearing? What gloves, fur coat, whatever did she have? And, you might think that's a silly thing, but as far as I know, the clothing Patsy wore that night was never actually given to law enforcement. So law enforcement could never actually test that actual clothing to the fibers that they found. They were able to test similar clothing, but they were never actually given the clothing that Patsy wore. So even animal fibers can link you to someone. Even carpet fibers from a car, carpet fibers as well, can be just as good as DNA. Margaret Zabinski says, it's so frustrating that so little info is available. Terry says, I thought it was hair from a large animal, like livestock. Julie says, Patsy's beaver fur trimmed boots or jacket.
Is beaver fur common? Is that a common thing to wear, a beaver fur?
Knowing Patsy, I'd say no. I don't think it's terribly common.
Yeah, so.
Jody says, law enforcement removed Keegan Klein's dog from his dad's house recently. That's interesting. That's interesting. What's your source for that? Do you know that for a fact? Terry says beaver fur was quite common back then. I'd be quite interested to see what Jean Karras says about that, because she is from Boulder. Do the folks in Boulder sort of generally walk around in beaver fur in winter? I wonder what the folks in Boulder say about that. Was that more an Atlanta thing? Lisa says, if Delphi was dry on Sundays, did Bridge Guy know his habit to get alcohol on Mondays? Jean Karras says never. Good to see you, Jean Karras. I kind of thought that might be the answer.
Never. Never.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought so.
Lisa had asked, I think that comment you read of hers was a follow-up. She had asked above, TCRS, what do you think about the fact that 80 to 90% of murderers have an alcohol problem, and if that had any bearing? I guess we don't know.
What I find in true crime is that most people have some kind of addiction, and I don't mean it's not like necessarily alcohol or drugs, but there's something where it sort of addles their brain, right? If you take the Chris Watts case, you say, what was he addicted to? Nicole Kessinger even said that. And I don't like to dodge the criminality of criminals by saying they've got a disorder, they committed a crime, they had a motive, and they had lots of other choices, but they elected to do that. The addiction tends to do a couple of things. It takes away the inhibition that should have been there, and it also drives the motive that's sort of there as well. So what I'm trying to say is, I don't know if you've ever been in a situation where you sort of wish something in a very simple way. You sort of, like you say, I wish it was next month, or I wish it was that. Criminals may often wish, I wish you weren't in my way, or I wish I could just get rid of you, or I wish you would just leave. And that thought then changes into something else. Like, what if I could make this wish come true? What if I could make you disappear forever? And they're not thinking of, I want to murder you. They're thinking, if you disappeared, I could live happily ever after. That's kind of what they're thinking. But part of why this thinking is so messed up and fragmented is they're spending all their time in some kind of fantasy. And part of that fantasy is you're addicted to something, or you're just obsessed with something. And that is reducing your ability to think rationally or be in the real world. And often it is substances. Substances may be peripheral, but it's nevertheless playing part of this whole thing. You could even argue in the Chris Watts case that he was on a certain kind of chemical besides the love chemical, besides his obsession and his addiction to Nicole Kessinger. He was literally on other chemicals that was sort of messing up his reality. For example, that he wasn't able to sleep, that he had so much energy that it was keeping him up at night. I even think that on its own is quite an interesting thing to look at, is people who don't sleep enough become more and more irrational. People who just don't sleep enough And you can say, well, what are you paying attention to? Well, it might be someone you're in love with. It might be social media. It might be I don't know, you're drinking and that's interrupting your sleeping habits. But the point is, crimes take place because someone isn't thinking, and they aren't in the real world the way the rest of us are. And so I don't know if I agree with alcohol being like this standard
maybe just
shadow
addiction.
presence. Yeah, I don't know if I agree with that. In the Barry Morphew case, it comes up. In the Barry Morphew case, the possibility of alcohol and drugs and something else, let's say medication, comes up. The truth is, it actually comes up quite a lot. Even in the John Benet Ramsey case, the housekeeper spoke about Patsy drinking a certain kind of wine or something. And then John took a pill, a sleeping pill that night, an Ambien. So often it does definitely come up. You can imagine if John Ramsey did drink an Ambien, and let's say was presented with a certain set of circumstances and he'd taken a sleeping pill, that he would not be thinking as clearly as he otherwise would have been. Just think about that in its own separate way. I think in the Amanda Knox, yeah.
I was gonna say I took an Ambien on the way to my honeymoon, and literally it knocked me out for 13 hours.
Yeah. No, so literally. Can you imagine if you take an
Ambien ever again because it's
my personal feeling is in the Amanda Knox case, the untold stories, the drug narrative, and we did try to interrogate that narrative in the books that we wrote a little bit. So it's definitely an important thing. How much it plays into this story is very, very hard to say. It's hard to say.
Julie said, where is it? Oh, she said, well, she was mentioning that the addiction in this case could be the child's addiction, that he's been
okay
found guilty of.
I don't want to say the
word, but and that's
okay.
Possible.
Okay, do you want to go on to the next one?
Yeah, Kelsey said, I feel joy when I see Libby smiling pictures of the life she lived. As long as I'm still hurting when I look at those pictures, as long as I'm still angry, he's winning and he's taking my life. He's already taken 2. He doesn't get to take mine too. And they had showed like a reel of photos of Abby, like eating watermelon, outside, playing softball. And they were asking her how it was, and she was saying that she chooses to see joy when she sees those photos. And Paul said, authorities, and this again is exactly what I've been seeing in chat, is the frustration. He says authorities haven't really released what evidence they have. Today, there really needs to be a reassessment of the evidence. For example, much of the evidence was tested for DNA, ? Look at the reports, the forensic analysis, the notes, etc. There's always further testing that can be done. And Susan said, that's right. They used to call you hurricane holes, always having them do more and more testing. And then since CrimeCon, we did learn more from the Ron Logan affidavit, which was that there was apparent staging at the crime scene, that it was there was a lot of blood, that there was article of clothing that they found, and so we have found out a little bit more, but it's not because authorities have gone over the evidence and released it. It's other people, it's social media releasing it. And he shared an example of a crime scene that was a mess, and they tested everything. And the woman who was murdered had fought so hard that her foot had pushed through her sock. And he thought to have the sole of her foot tested. And it was the only DNA evidence that was found. The DNA ended up matching a 17-year-old. And when assessing a crime scene, it's typical for there to be alterations at the scene. And this is what you had shared with it, keeping in mind that's an outdoor crime scene. Paramedics, K9 units, search parties, and family members have all been there. You have to be able to subtract that out the way it was when the offender left. It's also important to know any behavior he did that he didn't have to do to commit the crime. This is where profilers come in. And he said, for example, staging the crime scene.
Yeah. You've got to kind of imagine, and I must say, I was presented with this when I wrote King of Freaks, the book on the West Memphis 3. When you come upon a external crime scene, so you kind of got to imagine that you sort of, I'm talking about the bodies have now been removed and everyone's gone. Right, so let's say it's the day after or whatever. When you come upon an external crime scene, it's literally like walking, and it's often there's nothing there. There's no garden. There's no human paraphernalia, right? And so when you come there and you look, there's just nothing there. There's leaves, there's twigs, there's stones, there's dirt. You're surrounded by whatever, trees and sky. Now it's like, okay, solve this case. And if you compare that to inside a home, someone may have picked up a glass, right? But when you are in nature, you don't pick up a leaf, you don't sit down, you just sort of just cross through the area. When you're inside a building, a house, you tend to interact and sort of settle. You might sit down and watch TV. You might pick up a phone. You might be on a keyboard. You might open a refrigerator. But when you are outside, you are tending to be moving from A to B, or your interaction with the substrate is minimal. And so when you come out, and also you don't kind of know where the beginning or the end is. So, if you are coming to a crime scene, it's like, this room is the crime scene. Okay, now I know where it is. Now I know where to focus my attention. But when you're outside, it's like, where does this room end? Where's the end of it? And it may not even necessarily only be kind of what you can see. It may also be, to some extent, subterranean. Because that's the other dimension with outside, is often in outside scenarios, someone is either buried or drowned, or just they are kind of removed. There is another possibility, which is that they are dispersed, if you want to put it that way. I think the murder of Kelsey Bereth is kind of an example of where someone's remains end up just dispersed. That's also part of an external crime scene. To be honest, I don't think they're going to find Suzanne Morphew like they're going to find her. I think whatever is left of her is dispersed. And that is what makes an external crime scene really, really, really hard, is you've got to almost think at a molecular level, and it just makes it far, far, far difficult. And whatever you find, if it's not contaminated, it's probably been reduced. It's been compromised. So your chance of having a DNA case is very limited. And what to me, what is the best evidence in the Delphi case are the bodies of those children, just like in the John Benet Ramsey case. And so the fact that you don't have, as Cotton Star says, you don't have those reports means certainly we as investigators, your hands are tied. I don't know if the family Do the family have those reports? They don't, hey?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't think that they do. They said that they knew a little bit more than what the public knows, but they didn't say that they knew the cause of death, and nobody
What
else.
I'd like to know is, do the family have the right to those reports? I would love to know that. Do the family have the legal right to have those reports?
Yes. Becky Patty said that the girls had been found by investigators they were led there by a set of footprints. So she didn't say that they were the girls' footprints. She said a set of footprints led volunteers to the area that they were found. So I wonder if they took I'm sure that they took I don't know, if you could take imprints off the ground.
So what possibly of significance there is, if there's one set of footprints, could that have been your suspect carrying a body, for example? In other words, the footprints are actually deeper than they would normally be because it's someone carrying someone else. So they actually,
set.
Yeah.
She said a set. That means one set.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah. So it just makes you wonder, was someone carrying someone else?
Yeah. And Kelsey said that they had found a shoe, and that's how she first learned about it being her sister. It was the same type of shoe that Livy was wearing. It was just really sad.
Did they only find one shoe?
She just said that they found a shoe. So I don't know if a shoe was taken or in the process of getting to where they were found, that one was.
Because I would assume, besides the autopsy evidence, I would say secondary to that would be the clothing. What is on the clothing? What grass is there? Because you want to use that to find out where this actually happened, and then if there was moving and staging, what was that to do, right? You know what I mean? So the clothing could also be very important evidence here, which clothing is often very overlooked in crimes, including the washing of clothing.
Found an undergarment in the creek of one of the girls. I don't know if the water would have done anything to it.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if that's true. I mean, I need to see that in a report or something, but if that is true, it's suggestive of clothing being taken off and washed or disposed of. And, like you had in the John Benet Ramsey case, you had undressing and redressing. And what that shows is someone going to a lot of effort to cover their evidence linking to themselves, right? And that's then giving you an indication of who you're dealing with. You're dealing with someone who's not unsophisticated, someone who's, it sounds like it's premeditated, by the way, but also it sounds like someone who's quite careful. It's not like a random opportunistic, it's something that is carefully thought out, It's someone who's in a certain area of their life, they've given over themselves to the dark side, but in another area, they're capable of being careful within that, right? So there's that almost contradiction taking place, the recklessness and the carefulness.
Yeah. I'm not sure if Lisa in chat's aware of Indiana. She said family have no autopsy in Indiana. They don't have to release because the case is open. Yeah. And my impression was that they didn't have those.
Okay, next question.
When Well, this is a comment that Becky shared. She said, when we learned about it was more of a discussion. When we learned about this Anthony Shots account, it was a hard blow. We were led to believe it wasn't related to social media. I hadn't gone down that path and I didn't catch it. I failed both girls. I wasn't tech savvy enough. Libby loved crime shows and we'd talk about them afterwards. I never thought she'd do anything. I trusted her. I didn't check her phones. I didn't know what to check. And Paul said, in the online world, they're zeroing in on somebody they can lure in. It's a grooming process. Most parents won't catch it. You can't blame yourselves or Libby and Abby. I believe there's always hope for cases to be solved. Technology is improving. We have the released images of this man. There is some confusion which composite we should be looking at, and that should be clarified by investigating agency. I have some questions about these composites. Was the second composite released and modified to rouse or spook the perpetrator? If it was, it didn't work, and now there's confusion. The details of this man's face are not coming from that video. So where are the composites coming from? It must be coming from a witness. What is the veracity of this witness? Was it someone who interacted with him at the railroad tracks that day? Are there multiple witnesses? What is the veracity of the second composite? Let's clarify to focus the energies on this case. It was an oh shit moment for the perpetrator, seeing Libby's video of himself on television going towards the girls. His shoes, hat, clothes, those are all gone. He's changing his appearance, post-offense behavior. And that reminded me of the post-meditation that you often talk about in cases. What are they doing afterwards? What are their actions afterwards?
That's also a fascinating thing is, so when this bridge guy sees the video, he's like, oh shit, I better get rid of all the clothing that you see in that video. Well, there's all that evidence gone. Now there's a argument for not ever showing the bridge guy video, right? There's an argument for you don't show it because if you find that clothing, well, that's quite a good way to positively identify. So that's a dilemma that authorities are faced with. You give something to the public, then you also lose one of the cards you could have played. When you put that in a public space, you're literally giving that card. So it's almost like you've got a hand and you're giving that card to the perpetrator to play back against you or just to throw away, kind of thing. So that's definitely makes it difficult.
For someone that has a specific type of boots and they know they've been seen walking on the bridge, those boots are gone.
Yeah, absolutely.
5 years later, those boots are gone. Then they had a little bit, about 5 minutes for some questions, and an audience member came up and said, do you think that there being a reward will help to solve this case? And Paul said, from his point of view, it's very rare for a reward in this type of case to pay off and generate a tip that solves a case. With the reward being $325,000, a lot more people are likely to give tips to see if they'll help in solving the case, but it also dilutes the pool. You don't want garbage tips coming in. And then the second question referred to the DNA, and it says, why do you think they took a DNA sample and a hair follicle sample from Keegan Kline? What does that tell you about the evidence they have? And Paul said, in this day and age, if a hair sample is authorized, it tells me at the crime scene, off the victim's body or nearby, they found a human hair they need to do a comparison to. That's the only reason to do that. So that would explain why they did ask Keegan for a hair follicle sample, because that's not something that they have to do. They have to do these days. They could get the DNA other sources.
Yeah. So it sounds like there was a human hair. I mean, by inference.
Yeah. Right. He said, in his opinion, he said the only reason you would take a hair follicle sample was because they have a hair follicle sample they need to compare. They want to do a comparison with. So I don't know if that's
that raises another question.
they have.
that raises another question. Did Keegan Klein's hair sample match?
If it did match, they could. Wouldn't we know about that now?
Yeah, so that's the question. If it did match, I guess you could say, is that enough? You know, like a couple of months ago, it felt like there was going to be an arrest. It felt like, has this case been solved? And then,
even when I came back from CrimeCon and they were talking about this social media account, because it had just been 2 weeks prior, it was so timely. I felt more positive for the lead, and now it's just kind of like not really talked about anymore.
Okay, last question.
Yep. And HLN respondent didn't even let the family answer. Someone said, is there more audio and video? Why not release it after 5 years? And she hopped right in. She goes, I can answer that. The investigators are doing their jobs. It's not a cold case. And they're keeping that, knowing that that's what the person who did this also knows. And like we've said, I don't think that after 5 years, if there's something more that can be, and if there's not, then just say that. Maybe it's just airtime. Maybe there's nothing else to hear on the video. Maybe it's something, maybe it's the victims and they're not releasing that. I mean, I don't know, but it just seems like she was just quick to not let them answer.
Were you there when that question was asked?
Yes, I was there.
So you saw that, I think that's quite significant because
and then it ended. Then it ended after that.
It's
just like,
no, I think that is also kind of huge, is the fact that they aren't allowed to answer that. You know, like literally saying, I can answer that, meaning you can't answer that. And then also they're keeping that, which is an indirect way of saying law enforcement are keeping this extra video and audio. Like I don't really get it.
So that's actually an answer. That's an answer. That actually means that there is more. Yeah.
And to say, knowing that that's what the person who did this also knows, it's like, so what? So who cares what the other person thinks about it? It's like they still are out there. It's so what? I don't know. So I just find it quite interesting that the HLN person answers this. I don't know. It's, to me, a little bit crazy. She says the investigators are doing their jobs. It's not a cold case. I don't know if I agree with that. Maybe the investigators are doing their jobs, but again, in terms of the audio video, why you don't release that, just to me doesn't make any sense. How many cases do take place where they kind of go cold or they go nowhere, and then suddenly they're solved? It all comes together and it's solved. That's exceptional. It doesn't happen very often. And if you think that that's going to happen in this case, I don't know. Something new needs to happen. Otherwise, they're dreaming. Something new needs to happen.
Yeah. Where did I put it?
I'd love to know whether the HLN person here has actually seen this audio or video, whether they've like got it. And it's like, well, we're waiting. We will, because you would imagine, often law enforcement work with certain people at certain news media agencies. They are like their go-to people. So, and I've been in that position where I've been given privileged information. I still have information that nobody knows about, but you're not allowed to use it until you've either been given the go-ahead or the legal status or something changes. And so then you just sit on it. You know it, you can't tell anyone about it, and then you just sit on it. But it just makes me wonder, has Susan actually seen this audio video? the fact that she says I can answer that means she's obviously asked that question herself. And I would love to know if she's seen it.
But the only question she answered was that one. That's the only one she answered. She let them answer everything else. Someone said, why leave the phone? I don't think that the perpetrator knew about the phone. And according to according to Sergeant Holman, the audio that was from Livy's phone, the phone was found with the girls at the crime scene. So it obviously wasn't purposefully left. I think that maybe it fell out of a pocket or something, and they found it when they were searching the area. They didn't say where it was found. They just said that it was found at the crime scene. And that was Sergeant Holman who had said that.
Well, I must say the phone being left there is just, to me, absolutely crazy. It's like, if you think about, as Bria says, not the sharpest tool in the shed. Unless he ordered her to, like, I don't know if the phone was like, has got a password or whatever, but unless he took the phone and he cleaned what needed to be cleaned, you know what I mean? If he kind of went to the phone and he, let's say for argument's sake, let's put yourself in the shoes of the perpetrator. Let's say you had this opportunity. Here's the phone. And now you can either take it and hide it away or throw it in the creek or whatever, or you can leave it there, but as a false flag. You say there's nothing to see and nothing to hide, right? And so you could speculate and say theoretically he actually has access to the phone. He doesn't see the video, doesn't see the footage, but what he does see is he goes into Instagram and he deletes the interactions that are there, and he's like, now there's no way you're going to find me. But what he's forgetting is those interactions may be somewhere else as well, for example, on his profile. You know, it's like in the Chris Watts case, Chris Watts can hide away Shanann's text to him, Nicole Kessinger's text to him, and all of his texts. But they nevertheless, oh, there we go. Timmy, can you see there's a...
Look.
That's cute, eh?
That's what I'm
Siamese, right? What do you, it's not what kind of cat, eh?
He's a tabby.
Tabby, okay. It's a cute cat. Seems like all the proper true crime pets are grey, neither black nor white.
Yeah. There you go. Oh boy.
Yeah, so that definitely makes you think about it, like makes you wonder, could he have access to her phone under duress? And another way of...
fell out somewhere in the process of
but if you take the other thing, the underwear that is found removed, unless it was in his haste, unless whatever followed was this very hasty thing, you must remember, once they've died, he's got all the time in the world to do whatever he's going to do to cover the crime scene. You know, in terms of if no one's coming around, he's got a long time to spend there doing what he feels is appropriate, and then decide, no, I'm going to leave the crime scene. So it's really hard to imagine that. I don't know, you know, it could be that the phone fell under a leaf and he just didn't see it. It's hard to imagine, though. So it does make one wonder, did he actually get access to the phone? Because you've seen it in other cases. You know, in other cases, criminals get access to the phone and they do something with it. In the Scott Peterson case, Lacey's phone was in her Range Rover, I think. Half charged, I think. I'm not sure if it was on or off. Chris Watts' case, the phone was under the couch. I'm sure Chris Watts got hold of Shanann's phone. in the Barry Morphew case, Suzanne's phone's gone. No one knows where it is. In the
They would have thrown it in
Patrick
the
Frazee,
creek, not.
yeah, in the Patrick Frazee case, Kelsey's phone kind of took on a life of its own. It went with his mistress to Idaho. It sent texts to, after she died, sent texts to an employer, right? So, like in this case, you've really got to wonder, did the phone just sort of slip under a leaf, or is the phone something that he interfered with to say, look on the phone, you're not going to find anything? You know, in other words, you delete kind of that evidence. It seems to me to be quite a big risk, though. But who knows?
Yeah.
Unless you're dealing with quite a tech savvy guy. So you would, you know, like, you know, with Chris Watts committing the crime that he committed, and there was the whole fabric of the Vivint security system and the camera next door. He was aware of all that, but he thought he was sophisticated enough to take that in his stride. You may have had the same thing here, where you've got a somewhat tech savvy guy who thinks, yeah, I'll leave the phone behind, see what you can, you're not going to find anything. It's just an interesting thing.
Yeah, it's such a shame that we do have that piece of evidence. It was found, and it hasn't been able to be more helpful in finding this person who did this to them.
So they only found one phone, wasn't there another phone as well?
No, Abby didn't have a phone.
Or didn't she have a phone?
No, I've watched interviews, and her mother specifically said she didn't even
Did
have
Abby have Instagram?
I don't know if she had an Instagram profile. I know that Libby allowed Abby to use her iPad for social media, but I don't know if about Abigail's social media.
So the phone was Libby's, right?
It was.
Yeah.
Yes.
And Libby is the older of the two.
Libby is
So you can kind of,
it's going to be 14.
yeah, so you can actually kind of imagine that Abby, if Abby didn't have a phone, then she would often look at Libby's phone and look at what Libby was doing on her phone, including if she was on Instagram. Can you imagine them both sort of bending over her phone and tell him this or tell him that, or, you know what I mean? Just that kind of thing.
Lisa seems to be very familiar with the case. She says that the social media, Abby had Facebook.
Oh, okay.
So she didn't have a phone, but she had an account.
Yeah, that makes sense. That does make sense.
So I have one more session that I attended with them. I don't know if you want me to read about the cases.
I didn't know you had another session. Did you email it to me?
Yeah, you posted it on Patreon. It was Sister Strong Fighting Back Against the Dark Corners of the Internet.
Oh, okay. What made me think that was a different case?
Well, there's
I've got it here. I've got it here.
That were with Kelsey. They each shared their own personal case, and it was just the three sisters.
Yeah. I think for some reason I thought Sister Strong referred to Laurie Vallow or something. I'm not quite sure why.
But
okay, so that is quite an interesting title, given what Lisa and I were talking about just yesterday, fighting back against the dark corners of the internet, eh?
Yes. Do you want me to read?
Yeah, for sure, please.
Okay. So just a reminder, this three sisters that were sharing were Kelsey German, sister of Liberty German, Julie Murray, sister of Maura Murray, Sarah Turney, sister of Alyssa Turney. And all three are in their own ways very unique and, hate to say, interesting, but they are. So Liberty went first. Not Liberty. Kelsey went first to discuss about her sister Liberty, and she said, Liberty went missing on February 13th, 2017. She was found around noon the next day with her best friend Abigail Williams near the Mohan High Bridge Trail. A few months later, they found a video on Libby's phone that showed a man walking down the bridge saying, "Guys, down the hill." Later, they released a sketch.
So can I just interrupt you there? So what's quite interesting with that is a few months later, they found this video. So you can imagine if investigators took so long to find the video, you can see how even if the perpetrator had access to the phone, he may not have been able to find it. You know?
I thought that maybe Kelsey, being younger 5 years ago when it happened, had misspoke, because I do have the timeline according to when things were released, and it isn't the way that she said it. So what I just read is her exact words, but that isn't actually in real time how it happened.
Because I think you've got to think about it practically. If they did record him, right, with the phone, then what happened after that? Did he take the phone and turn it off, right? Did you know? So in other words, or is it a situation that often happens with a phone? I don't know. Was it a flip phone?
Well, the girls were found on February 14th. On February 15th, they released the photo of Bridge Guy. So.
Oh, okay.
It wasn't months later. She just, I think it was just a misspoke, but I didn't correct it in my notes because I was transcripting.
Well,
so I researched that because I wanted to clarify from my own knowledge of the case.
Because so, you can imagine if he opened the phone, and you would imagine, wouldn't you just look at, except I think it wouldn't be a smartphone, you know, back then. Maybe it would have been. What kind of phone was it? 5 years ago.
Lisa, no. Lisa, do you know what kind of phone it was? She's on top of this case. Did you go to CrimeCon?
Because I think you've kind of got to. Lisa says they found it right away. She misspoke. Okay, yeah. Okay, so it still makes you kind of wonder, didn't the guy see him being recorded? And then if he did, didn't he try and get rid of it? Did at some point was the phone turned off? You can imagine the phone being turned off, and then when you turn back on, well, how are you going to navigate there, right? You can imagine if the criminal comes into this situation and someone's got a phone, you're going to say, turn off your phone, or you're going to turn it off. You can imagine that being the first thing you do. You might later on want to turn it on and sniff around there, but you can imagine if the whole idea is I'm here to commit a crime and you've got a phone, you might be like, let's turn your phone off. And that would also be an interesting thing. We know with the Barry Morphew case that his phone went into airplane mode on and off often, and that was like, what's going on here? And I think if you can, I don't know if the phone would show going on and off in terms of its metadata. If it could say this is when it was off, then I don't know whether the cellular records could show that, but that would certainly be interesting as well, because if it does, it could tell you, it could indicate potentially time of death. In other words, the time the phone goes off would be arguably within half an hour of 15 minutes to half an hour or whatever of the crime actually taking place. So that whole thing, if you just think of it practically, opens up a really interesting dimension to it.
A few people in chat are saying that they heard that it was an iPhone 5.
Okay.
And Lisa used to live in Delphi.
Oh, okay.
Very interested to hear what your thoughts are of law enforcement in the community and what people in the community think.
And also, Lisa, what do you think happened? Who do you think is the perpetrator here? What's your thought on that? What's the thought in Delphi? What is your thought? Kathy says, Wiki says smartphone, but I don't know. I really don't know this case. Julie says, especially if they met their killer through social media. Yeah. I think especially if they met the killer through social media, he would want to look at their phone.
He'd be aware that they have a phone with them.
Copper Horse says the phone rang until 5:30 p.m. the 13th, then went into voice mode.
Oh, wow.
That's interesting. Leah says, I live in Indiana as well, but south of Delphi. Never been there. So just out of interest sake, Suzanne Morphew and Barry Morphew also come from Indiana.
Wow.
Copper Horse says probably the battery died at the time. That does make sense. But so, maybe not. Lisa says, I think meth involvement and possible safe harbor from Bridge neighbor, but not, okay. So Lisa, do you think, yeah. So Lisa, you don't think it's Keegan Klein?
Yeah, it's really interesting having people who live in the area in the chat. It's good.
So Lisa says my person of interest lived in walking distance and moved afterwards. Okay.
Is it not any of the ones that have been mentioned, or not Keegan, she says?
Yeah. So, Lisa, do you not see it as social media? Do you think the Anthony Shots thing is irrelevant? Thought Criminal says, I keep thinking meth because of that. And okay.
So it is interesting with the case that they release a photo from, or they release a photo early on, then it takes a couple years and they release another sketch. And then they do the same thing with the audio. They release 3 words, and then later down the road, they release another word. So it's,
yeah.
Yeah. And that's what she says. She said later they released a sketch, and then a few years later released a second sketch. This year, they're looking into the Instagram profile Anthony Shots, as well as other social media accounts that may have interacted with that account. So that was her sharing with the audience about the crime involving her sister.
Okay.
And I think it was originally it was called the Snapchat murders, and then they changed it. I think I remember reading it. Originally, they called it, and then they took that label away.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Then Julie Murray described her sister, Maura Murray, and her sister went missing on February 9th, 2004. It was very, very early, around 3 a.m. Maura submitted her nursing school homework. Later in the day, she emailed her professors and said there was a death in the family, which wasn't true. Then she looked up directions to northern New England, then went to take out all the money she had, which was only about $280. She went to the liquor store, bought some alcohol, and picked up some accident forms she promised she'd do for her dad. Then she headed north in her 1996 beat-up Saturn. About 7:30 p.m., a resident of Haverhill, New Hampshire, called 911 to report a vehicle off to the side of the road. A local bus driver passed by and reported that he'd spoken to the driver. She'd been in an accident and he wanted to make sure she was okay. Maura told him she was good. She had called AAA. That was not true. Maybe she attempted to, but there was no signal in the area. 10 minutes later, when the police officer got there, the vehicle was locked but abandoned, and no one has heard from her since. So her sister is still missing. Went missing in 2004. So she was there to keep her sister's story in the media.
18 years ago.
Yeah. And the third sister was Sarah Turney describing the disappearance of her sister, Alyssa Turney. And Alyssa Turney went missing on May 17th, 2001. It was her last day of high school in Phoenix, Arizona. Sarah, the woman who was at CrimeCon, was 12 at the time. Years later, police, she said, sat me down and said, "We believe it was your father that murdered Alyssa." Sarah got the 3,000-page case file. Police said they couldn't arrest her father and suggested that she get social media coverage. Sarah started her own podcast, which is still up and running.
Just stop there. It's quite amazing that could this have been in 2001? Like, at what point did they say they suggested she get social media coverage? But I mean, it's quite incredible that the police actually say to her, "Take this to social media." That's pretty incredible.
I don't have the date handy, but it was years later. It was like over a decade later.
Yeah. You know what I thought was really interesting was when Vicky White became a fugitive, they didn't really release any recent photos of her. So they were like telling the public these people are on the run, but in terms of Vicky White, they didn't really release updated photos of her. So, you know, it was like you could argue that they were trying to protect her in a way, if you know what I'm saying. You know, the photos that they kept releasing was a photo of her.
I didn't understand why how are they protecting her?
Well, because they showed very clear photos of his face from CCTV,
right.
But you never really got a really good look at, like, there was like one photo of her. We were like, wow, she's actually a bit older. Yeah. But you never really got a really good look at Vicky White's face in terms of the photos that you got from the U.S. Marshals. And I kind of got the feeling they were sort of trying to protect her. And another example is when Brian Laundrie was on the run, they didn't say he's armed and dangerous. They didn't even say he's armed. And I think that was to protect him. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And so law enforcement kind of make a decision. They say, we need the public's help, but we don't want too much of their help, put it that way. So in other words, the public are kind of a double-edged sword. The public can get too involved, and the law enforcement just want enough involvement, you know.
7 Alibi says, I live an hour away from Delphi, and talks about the sheriff having strange, bizarre body language, his voice, and the tip email is to his inbox. And she says he has an RSO brother. I don't know what that is. What is an RSO? brother.
RSO.
I'm not in, I don't know.
Radiation safety officer. Is that what it is?
Oh,
Not
so
quite
law
sure.
enforcement, is that what that is?
Uh,
Huh. Oh, now, thank you. Sorry, Priya, just made you write that.
oh, okay.
No.
RSO. Okay, now
I'm
we
like
know. I
thinking
was like,
law
yeah,
enforcement. No,
well,
thank you.
yeah. Well, I was also like, I have no idea what that is, and so obviously, yeah.
Wow, you were being very good in chat, and I just made them all write it all over the place. Sorry.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, okay, so
Yeah,
that is definitely quite interesting. So,
sorry.
yeah, you can kind of imagine that if if you have someone that is exposed in a web of that stuff,
Got it.
I'm
Thank
talking
you.
about, let's say the perpetrator is exposed, the real perpetrator, and you got a family members also part of that community, you might be like, I don't know if I really want this to come out. You can definitely see that.
Yeah.
I've got to say, I don't like the conspiracy theory aspect to that, but I can see how you can think in that area. Yeah.
Okay.
Julie says,
So
Estet says there are 17 RSOs in Delphi now. Okay. And Delphi is
I feel
quite
like I
small.
have that in my neighborhood. You guys are lucky in Delphi. Oh my gosh.
Delphi has got a population of under 3,000, and that was
Wow.
about 12 years ago. So it's a really small little place.
Yeah. No, I apologize, Bria. That was me asking what that meant.
Yeah, no, I also didn't know. What I said, radiation
We have
something
so many
officer.
helpful people in chat.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
Uh,
like this.
yeah, Seven Alibi says, thank you for reading my comment and considering it as food for thought. Yeah, it was definitely interesting. I mean, I think if you're thinking, why isn't this case being prosecuted / solved, that you've also got to think beyond, like, is there not enough evidence? What if there is enough evidence? What's the answer to that? I remember through the course of this case being asked over and over again, please cover the Delphi case. And I was like, there was like this weird thing of, there seems to be so much evidence / no evidence. That was my take on it. It was like, for example, why have they not released the autopsy evidence? So people for a long time were like, Nick, you must go and cover the Delphi case. And as I say, it was like, so wow, they've got video of this guy. Well, where's the rest? Like, you can't just like, that's it. And
Right.
I just find it weird that the autopsy evidence is still not there. It's just like, okay, do you want to solve this or not? Because that's the key to solving it. That's the best evidence, is what's related to that. Yeah, anyway.
So going back to Sarah Turney, the police suggested she get social media coverage. So she started her own podcast called Voices for Justice, which I now follow. Halfway through the podcast, they arrested her father and charged him with the murder of her sister. In April 2020, Sarah began posting about the case on TikTok. It received millions of views. In August 2020, Michael Turner was arrested, indicted, and charged by a Maricopa County grand jury on second-degree murder charges in the death of Alyssa. They're now waiting for trial. Alyssa's body has never been found. So she wasn't able to really comment anymore because it's the case is going to
Yeah.
come on trial. And once
So
that happened, she no longer talked about her case on her channel. She talks about other cases.
so there's a fascinating example of how trial by TikTok actually worked, how going onto social media actually appears to have led to a breakthrough. And because, I mean, it says this is like 19 years later, she began posting on TikTok, and by August, this guy was arrested. Trial by TikTok, and I don't know, maybe a successful trial by TikTok. I must say, just saying those words just sounds ridiculous. But
say that 5 times fast.
Yeah.
I'm not.
Yeah. And so, I didn't actually know that social media was going to come up so much in this debate, but I think I mean, we're about to deal with this again in the next section here, but that's exactly what we were talking about yesterday, is the positive and negative impact of it. And it definitely can have positive impacts in true crime when you are crowdsourcing information, but it can also have very, very negative impacts when you've got a Depp versus Heard fiesta going on, a feeding frenzy going on, when it turns into that kind of thing. When you have a trial by TikTok taking place next to the actual trial, I don't know if I don't know if it serves the public good.
She stopped posting about the case on social media now. Now she got the exposure and what she needed.
Yeah. So it provides a very interesting contradiction or alternative story to trial by TikTok, I guess, Yeah.
And so that was the first session, was sharing the cases of their family members. And then the next part was about how the negative impact of social media. And I guess I noted that all of the families expressed that they have been attacked online, given death threats. All 3 of the families who are also victims of crime. Sarah Turney said she received death threats. She was even sent an animation of the death of her sister, which showed graphic images, including her as her sister's own attacker. And she said more than that, but I didn't write it down. But it was,
well, if you think about that, that's a case where her sister's been killed and her father's accused of doing that, and now she's basically exposing her father. She's getting death threats. Who do you think they're coming from? Can I read the next one? Julie Murray talks about the voyeurism in social media, and this is exactly what I've been talking about: enjoying seeing pain or distress of others. This is in terms of a murder. This is not Depp versus Heard. This is not a civil case. It's not defamation. This is voyeurism in a murder trial or a murder case, or someone that's disappeared, and then being treated like a character, like a fictional character, when you actually at the center of this real thing that's taking place. Anyway, do you want to read the next one?
Sure. Just to go back to Sarah Turney, said, well, who was she receiving the death threats from? She was the only, I think she's one of, she has, I think, 5 siblings, or she's one of 6, but she was the only one in her family that went on to cooperate.
It's a good
with
point.
Authorities.
It's a good point.
The rest were like, no, we're not doing this.
I always find in situations like this, the family members, like some of them seem to go over to the dark side, and some of them you know, like when Jodi Arias was on trial, who from her family supported her and who didn't. When you look at Laurie Vallow and Chad Daybell, who on their family still supports them, who doesn't. And I always find that fascinating. Like someone's on trial for murdering someone. No, they're innocent, I support them. Yeah. I mean, if you ask that question in terms of Depp versus Heard, who supported Amber? Well, her sister. You might say, well, where's her mother? Her mother's died. Where's her father? You know where Amber Heard's father is?
I don't.
I'd be interested to know, but I always find that interesting, how the family dynamic unravels, and often it does. Often it's like a case of picking sides and, you know, all that kind of thing.
Thought Criminal says that her father's also passed.
Yeah, I would have thought so. So she's quite alone now. She's quite young. She's in her 30s, Amber. She lost her father and her mother, and, you know, in terms of family members. Right. It's quite young to be on your own in that respect.
Yeah. I mean, I'm in my 40s and I'm very fortunate right now, but
yeah,
it's young to have lost both your family members.
I wonder whether she saw Johnny as like a father figure, you know, like whether she wanted like an older guy as a father figure. I wonder whether that played into it. Anyway, I don't want to stray too much from the theme. Kelsey German spoke about, so she's
been cyber talked. She talked about online trolls and threats towards her and her family. So they have all had the negative impact of social media, even when there's been a positive, some positives from it as well. The next question was social media and the true crime community. How can we help? That was what someone asked. They said, well, how can we continue to help? Because of course we're all there for CrimeCon and listening to their stories. How can we help? And Sarah Turney said, true crime can be advocacy. Look at their intentions, meaning the social media platform's intentions. Social media can be used to spread awareness. I personally have witnessed the power of a single share. I started with 0 followers. Every like, every comment and share can actively help. So this is the young woman who started her podcast, shared her story on TikTok. She said, you know, it comes down to the intentions, and that she started with 0, and she kept saying that I started with 0 followers, and now I have over 1 million on TikTok.
Can I read the second one?
Yes.
And I'm going to read this. So this is so the question is social media and the true crime community. How can you help, right? And this is obviously with direct bearing on the Delphi case, but I want you to think about it. Certainly in Judy's case, it's to do with her case, but it's nevertheless related to CrimeCon and Delphi, you know, kind of directly or indirectly. But I want you to think of it in a general sense, as if you're a member of the true crime community, if you're here on chat, you definitely are. But the question is, how can you help? As someone who's on social media, as someone who is social media as the true crime community, how can you help? Yet listen to her answer. She says, engage with empathy, correct miscommunications. Social media exposure can help spread awareness, encourage people to disagree. So it's not a case that everyone's got to agree. Differing competing theories, that's how cases are solved. So when there's a difference of opinion, you don't like shut that person down. You kind of go, maybe some of what you're saying is true. Maybe what I'm saying is also true. Maybe the truth is the combination of both. Maybe a truth is 6 of one and half a dozen of the other. Be curious, ask questions, do due diligence, research, be honest and transparent. What a great answer. I'm going to just read it again. Engage with empathy, correct miscommunications. Social media exposure can help spread awareness. Encourage people to disagree. Don't be upset if people disagree. Differing competing theories, that's how cases are solved. Be curious. In other words, be open-minded. Allow and listen, allow more information to come in. Ask questions. Do due diligence. Research. Be honest and transparent. If I had to add anything to that, I would say I think what social media needs is more honest avatars. And by that I mean be who your name is. Otherwise, you have the temptation to misbehave and to say things because you can hide who you are. So I would also add to that, be who you are on social media, your real name.
My husband says I never should have.
Yeah. No, that's the unfortunate.
Happened,
yeah, that's the unfortunate dark side to all of this is when people decide they don't like you, it can actually be quite dangerous. So it's like it almost favors the dark side of social media in a way. Be nasty, hide who you are, blah blah blah.
Do you want me to read Kelsey?
Yeah, please. Thank you.
Okay. She said, I want to be a victim's advocate and I'm learning how to better communicate with detectives. Create content ethically. Find your people and starve the trolls. Don't feed the trolls. Find community in the true crime community.
I love that.
Yeah. Wow, that was pretty timely. Oh my gosh. Wow.
Yeah, but I love that. Find community in the true crime community. Find genuine, authentic communities, not tribes and whatever. Find real people with real hearts and minds, and people that you can have serious, conversations with. But people who are informed and people who are sensible and have got integrity, and you can often see that. Somebody left a comment on one of my YouTube videos where they said, wow, you can't use exclamation marks, and then left a lot of exclamation marks. And the point of all of that is just to say, when you are in someone's lounge, do you shout at them and you exclaim loudly and you kind of rude when you're in somebody's lounge, even if it's someone you don't know? So how do you act when you're in public with people or in a lounge situation where if you were really, really insulting, that person could get up and slap you through the face? Well, the answer is you tend to act with a modicum of decorum. You speak in a normal tone of voice, you wait your turn, you listen, you say things in a reasonable way. Well, that's how we should chat online. Don't use all caps, don't use lots of exclamation marks, don't be rude, don't be insulting. And if you can't, there are a lot of communities where you can go and do that. This isn't one of them. If we're trying to get a more civilized society, let's try and be civil ourselves. Quite simple. So I don't think it's asking a lot to say, please just take it easy on exclamation marks, because all of that is provocative and triggering and trying to mock. You tend to be mocking and insulting when you're using exclamation marks. You're trying to emphasize just how ridiculous something is, and it's not necessary. Just keep it what it is. One thing I've learned as a writer is the more varies you use and the more you try to emphasize something, the more you actually reduce its emphasis. So, for example, let's say you say, it's cold here tonight, right? And you say, it's very, 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 very cold here. That almost means nothing. You know what I mean? It's enough just to say, it's cold. Okay, we got the message, thanks. And if cold doesn't say it enough, just say the word freezing. It's freezing. Okay. not. It's very, 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 very freezing. It's just kind of the way we become so emphatic that the emphasis itself now almost means nothing. You know what I mean? We are so prone to trying to exaggerate everything that everything is exaggerated, and so it's like, what are you actually talking about? And I think that was one of the things that plagued Depp versus Heard is Amber felt my case isn't strong enough unless I exaggerate it. This bruise I've got doesn't look bad enough, so I'm going to need to embellish. A bruise is a bruise, but you can tell that was definitely going on. Didn't you get that sense, Stephanie? Can I put you down?
Yeah, you want to know what I really think? No, I think that she had a bruise. I think that she also might have. I don't think that either one was honest. But I think that the case was about defamation, and that was there defamation or not, and it was turning into something else.
Yeah, Julie.
I think that they are both. I don't think highly of either one. That's just my own self. I used to be a huge Johnny Depp fan, like really big. And no matter what love or hate is out there about him, for me, I'm not a fan anymore. But I just think that the case was about defamation, and I just don't like the hate. That's
Kathy says,
and if it
sorry
was
to interrupt you. Yeah. No. Finish what you were saying. Sorry.
No, I just if it was the other, if the roles were reversed, no matter who the hate is going towards, I just think it's so nasty and beneath.
Yeah.
Beneath us as human beings. I think that you need to just the thing that I don't like about Amber, I'm not going to do.
Okay, so Kathy says, I think she did that because she felt invalidated. I've had that happen to me. You must bear in mind she's opposite this big star, and I think there is a bit of inadequacy and a bit of I've got to be more effective because of that, if that makes sense. So I do think she felt intimidated. I think she felt invalidated, and hasn't that been borne out? She was invalidated. She felt invalidated because she was being invalidated, kind of thing. Ricardo says, so it seems like this case won't budge unless something comes out of social media. Does kind of feel like that, but I mean, in a way, what you're saying has a double interpretation. Maybe the social media, not what comes out now, but what was coming out then, the social media in terms of the Instagram, maybe that is the key to this. I think it's maybe a combination of that and the autopsy evidence. I don't know.
I think that non-negotiable, non-speculative evidence is what is needed at this point.
Ms. Fravel says, I too so admire pet people. They're the best. I don't know if you saw Stephanie with her cat, but she had a cat a moment ago. What's your cat's name?
Every time I'm doing this, I'm petting him. He knows not to jump on the table, so because I'm at my dining room table. But that's what I'm doing when I'm down there.
Kathy says they also needed better. Okay, yeah.
Oh, I was just gonna say, so that was my Delphi sessions.
Yeah, thanks so much for being
More
there, but also
than I thought.
Yeah, taking those notes, really interesting. There there are a couple of things I learned. I don't think I knew about the phone being. I may have known it and forgotten about it, but I didn't know about the phone being found. Yeah. So I also think it's quite interesting. People saying the bridge guy doesn't look like Keegan Klein. To me, that's quite interesting. Maybe it isn't.
That's what I said.
Yeah, no, I think it looks enough like him. That's my personal opinion. But I think it is interesting, and I think a bit unfortunate, because if it's not him, then where do you go? Then where does that take you? Yeah.
Bria said, "Who else did you see there, Stephanie?" Oh my gosh, like now there's so many to list. But I saw Danielle Robinson. I heard Nancy Grace talk about Nellie Holloway. I heard about the Casey Anthony case. That was really interesting.
Who spoke about that?
I don't have her name. She was the crime scene investigator. She said she found Kaylee Anthony and held her bones in her hands.
Do you want to do that one next?
Sure. I mean, yeah. And you're reading the book on Patreon, so it's.
Yeah. I've actually got Jose Baez's
3.
Oh, yeah.
There's a bunch.
I've got Jose Baez's book next to my bed, and it's really weird reading his account. Yeah, definitely is quite weird reading it.
Yeah. And then there were other sessions that I did, like Candace DeLong taught us like criminal profiling. So she read us a case, and then we had to come up with the forensic profile. And then at the end, she told us what really happened, and we got to see how close we were. So that was really neat.
Yeah.
Yes, it's Alina, Lisa. You're right. It's her first name is Alina.
Yeah.
Alina,
yeah.
The woman that spoke on Casey Anthony.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll write that one up next.
You know what's really interesting with, if you compare Johnny Depp versus Amber Heard to Casey Anthony, in the Casey Anthony case, if you have to ask the question, did Casey Anthony lie, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is Casey Anthony a liar? Did Casey Anthony lie, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you take just that question and you apply all of that to Johnny Depp versus Amber Heard, I think it's just quite interesting the way, you say, Casey, in terms of the defense case, just because Casey Anthony lied doesn't mean blah, 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 right? And I remember when I covered it, just thinking like it's just like, oh, so she lied, so it's no big deal, right? But I'm just saying, ultimately, Casey Anthony went on trial, and there was no doubt that she lied, but she was actually found innocent. Where her defense lawyer basically says, yes, she lies. That doesn't make her guilty. And for me, it's very weird, because I don't often take the defense side, especially in a case like that one. But if you do take that reasoning into Amber Heard and you say, yes, she lied, that doesn't make ... I think it's just quite an interesting way of thinking about it. Yeah. I don't want to take it too much further than that.
Another really good one that I saw was the creators of the podcast Unraveled, and that was all about the Long Island serial killer. That was so cool.
Okay.
And they showed us unseen footage that they weren't able to put on their podcast. So
Julie says
I don't know if I'm supposed to, but I videotaped it.
Okay. Julie says, I would like to look at Michael Peterson at some time in the future. Yeah, that is quite an interesting case,
and
that's for sure.
Oxygen was sharing all about that HBO series that came out now. That's on it's called The Staircase.
Yeah. I think to me it's like, Nick, it's been 3 hours. I need to go outside. And you need.
No, I gotta. Oh my god, my family's outside. They're being really respectful.
I must say thank you so much for doing this, because it was quite quite difficult to schedule. We had to sort of dodge birthday parties and this and that, and so I really appreciate it. Yeah, I think if you're up for Casey Anthony, just let me know. And you know what? I think it would be ideal to have Lisa sit in on that, because Lisa and Lisa wanted to actually write.
So cool.
Lisa actually wanted to write the book that eventually became Treachery. Lisa was like, I want to actually write, I want to write this book. And so I was like, so I'll kind of step aside, right? So I'm just saying that to say that Lisa's really passionate about the Casey Anthony case. Lisa actually went to the scene. She actually went to the woods. She went to, I think it would be really interesting to have her on. You talking about CrimeCon.
I would be honored and humbled for her to join us.
Yeah. To me, I'll be with you in 5 minutes. Just stand by. I think he's getting a bit antsy. He's quite a possessive little dog. He's like, okay, now that's enough. If I'm working, he'll like jump against my leg.
Coming up to me too.
Yeah.
But my cat doesn't just want love. My cat wants treats.
Yeah,
it's different with cats than dogs.
I'm sure. Yeah. Cats can also be. Cats can be incredibly they're independent and they've got their own life, but when they're hungry, they're like very in your face. Yeah, absolutely. Ivy would jump up against my chest and look at me like, are you in the real world? This is my time now. You know exactly what to do. It's like
my alarm clock.
Really, really, yeah. Yeah, cats can be pretty.
Right there.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So Bria, would it work for you if we do Van Gogh letters around about this time tomorrow? Would 9 or 10 p.m. work for you tomorrow? Because I'd like you to be in chat if possible.
Me?
Bria.
Oh, Bria.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if I do it tomorrow at 10 p.m. That's about 10 p.m. in France, if that would work for Bria.
Most welcome, sunflowers. Thank you. She said yes.
Bria says that should be good for me. That's cool. So I just want to end off just saying that what's quite amazing in the Van Gogh story is right now in the story, him and his brother are kind of estranged. And it's the one and only time in their whole life, their whole relationship, that they're actually not getting on very well. And the reason is because Vincent's acting pretty crazy. He's dressed like a tramp. He smells. He's kind of just going down like some kind of spiral. But the amazing thing is he comes out of that spiral. Hi, Nisi, good to see you. He comes out of that spiral as an artist. So he goes into this really horrible place where he's even estranged from his brother, but he comes out of it as the artist, this artist that's going to change the world. So episode 12, don't miss it. It's going to be really interesting. It is in literally a really dark place called the Borinage, and so that's episode 12. So I would like Bria to be there. Stephanie, I hope to see you. But all the rest of you members, will be really good to see you there as well. Nisi says, thanks for a wonderful afternoon.
I'm traveling back from my son's robotics competition because it's
Okay.
in Massachusetts. But I should, if it's at 10 p.m., I should be back, and I'll be able to commit to being here to about 11:30.
Okay, that's cool. Yeah. So
Just because I
I don't know
have
if
to work the next day.
if you can catch some of it, it'll be good. But remember,
Yeah.
it's 10 p.m. my time.
Oh, so what time is that here?
That's about 1 or 2 p.m. I think.
Okay, then I can't. That's fine though. Bria hasn't been able to make it.
It might be about 4 p.m. I think it's 4 p.m.
Yeah. His competition, we have to leave here at 6 a.m. and I won't be home till about 8.
Oh, okay.
So I'll catch you on the replay. It's okay.
Okay. Okay. Copper Horse says thank you, TCRS and Stephanie. Wonderful live. I'm glad that we got to do this because I've been wanting to do it for a while, and yeah, your notes as usual really brilliant, and really just brings us closer to the people at the center of this, talking in their own words and what they know, and that's really valuable. Timmy, I will be with you in a moment. I will be with you.
The 3 sisters that spoke were just so well spoken. To think what they have gone through and then chosen to come to a CrimeCon to speak so eloquently and so, as you heard from their suggestions about how we can do better, they just had so many wonderful thoughts.
Yeah. Anyway, thanks very much for that. Bria says it's almost the 1-year anniversary for Summer Wells. Yeah. I think we're going to start from now. We're going to start getting that sort of anniversary thoughts and where's the investigation right now, and we'll probably get Candace making some kind of statement and whatnot. So we'll see. But yeah, I didn't expect to be at this point. I really didn't expect to be at this point. Summer Wells still not been found, and never mind that if somebody did something, nobody even knows. It's like Summer Wells is missing, but what about someone being responsible? So, and that's compounded on the other disappearance of Rose Bly, right? Candace's sister. That's another one. So, I don't know. Sometimes true crime is, I don't know. It feels like there's a lot of hopelessness, you know. But I don't know. I think you've got to hold on to hope, and we've got to hold on to one another. So, Bria says the silence of the lambs and the dogs. If there was death in or around the people or property there that day, the dogs surely know. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Remember that great talk that Bria had with us about the dogs.
Yeah. Bria, I'm going to be watching the French Open, so it's obviously in your country. I don't know if it's going to be 5 sets, but the how long the French Open goes on for may play into when we do the live. So just keep that in mind. I will keep you in the loop on Instagram, like, you know. But I definitely am going to watch the French Open. Bria says, thanks so much for tonight, you guys. Thanks, Stephanie. Stephanie, I'm going to let you go back to your family. 3-hour session, so thanks very much. Cotton Star, thanks for joining us here and yesterday as well. It's always good to have you. Also, thanks to the members and the mods, been very good. Take care. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. And I'm glad we've sorted out the sound.
Say go
okay,
Cyber
cheers.
Nights.
Yeah.
Bye.
See you.
Bye-bye.